Chapter 68. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The third day of the Alchemy Conference. When Qin Yu arrived at Alchemy Mountain, he received a notice from an Immortal Eclipse Valley disciple that he no longer needed to participate in today's competition. After the competition ended, he could go with the top 9 ranked disciples to the Radiant Redwood to cultivate for a month. After explaining everything, the Immortal Eclipse Valley disciple coldly looked up and down several times. Then he snorted and turned around, showing the back of his head to Qin Yu. Now, if Immortal Eclipse Valley's disciples were to choose the most unpopular person to participate in the competition, then Qin Yu would absolutely be the champion. Luckily, he had encountered so many things along the way that he had long since become immune to them. This matter should have been Taoist Wang's idea. This person truly cherished his talent, but unfortunately, whether it was because of the Radiant Redwood or the little blue lamp that no one else could know about, Lin Ming could only choose to refuse. He felt a bit guilty in his heart. Qin Yu shook his head and drew back. Since he didn't need to participate, he was happy to be at ease. But not long after, Taoist Wang arrived. He snorted coldly, his nose not his nose, his eyes not his eyes. But if you don't want to, don't come closer. You're sitting so close, it's hard for me to pretend that I don't see you. Qin Yu rubbed his nose. He cupped his hands together and bowed. Greetings, Senior Wang. I thank Senior for looking after me. Taoist Wang coldly sneered. I wasn't the one who helped you ascend. Don't thank the wrong person. Qin Yu froze. I haven't even said what it is yet, and you're admitting it without being pressed? Taoist Wang thought that he had defeated Qin Yu, so he felt a bit better and his complexion improved. He stared at the third day's match, no longer bothering with Qin Yu. On the third day of the Conference of Alchemy, it was still held on Alchemy Mountain. However, the rules were changed at the last minute. Alchemy would be held in the open space at the foot of the mountain. The 9 people who refined the most precious and highest quality elixirs won directly. A cold sweat dripped down Qin Yu's back. Luckily, he didn't need to participate in the competition. Otherwise, if he really had to compete in alchemy, he might not even be able to enter the top 10. After all, this competition involved all the young alchemists of the Southern Empire and Northern Dynasty. Hidden dragons and crouching tigers couldn't even describe a tenth of this competition. In fact, Qin Yu's cold sweat hadn't flowed in vain. There were only 84 participants on the third day, and many of them had a backup plan. Today, he no longer held back and used his full strength to refine pills. His methods could be considered incomparably exquisite. Taoist Wang curled his lips. That boy fourth from the left isn't bad. He should be a junior from the Northern Dynasty's Jiang sect. He refined a foundation establishment realm soul shrouding pill. After swallowing it, it can form a layer of protection around the soul. Looking at its quality, it should be a medium grade one. It can even resist the divine sense strike of an early golden core. Taoist Wang curled his lips again. The girl in the 8th place from the left is refining a 9 revolution golden pill. The medicinal efficacy isn't as fierce as its name suggests, but amongst Foundation Establishment realm pills, the difficulty is at the peak. It's rare that her technique is so skillful, and she's about to form the pill. If nothing goes wrong, she'll be in the top 10. Taoist Wang curled his lips. That boy on the back right, his aura is dark and gloomy. I don't know where this junior came from, but his alchemy skills are extremely formidable. What he is refining right now should be a rare early golden core level goo poison pill. With a Foundation Establishment cultivation base, refining a golden core stage medicinal pill, not bad at all. His curled lips weren't because he was disdainful, but because he was relaxed. He casually commented that the old Taoist was spicy and straight to the crux of the matter. It was unknown who he was speaking to, but Qin Yu could clearly hear it. He felt as if he had benefited a great deal from it. Although he found it funny, Taoist Wang's alchemy skills were truly exquisite. Qin Yu saw a familiar face. It was the one that Daoist Wang had commented on as dark and gloomy. When Qi Jiao was selling the black sword scabbard, he had appeared and competed for it with 500 spirit stones. Qin you never imagined that he would also be a formidable alchemist. Looking carefully, this person's alchemy techniques were strange, but he couldn't say exactly what was wrong with them. But there was one thing he could be sure of, and that was that this person wasn't someone good at alchemy. 2 hours later, the grand alchemy meeting ended. As Daoist Wang had said, the people he had commented on were all in the top 9. Those that stood out from the hundreds of people were naturally outstanding geniuses of the younger generation. So it was normal for them to be arrogant in their hearts. Although they didn't say anything to Qinyu, who had entered through the back door, their expressions were filled with arrogance and disdain. Eclipse Xian had a cold and solemn expression. He said in a low voice, "The grand alchemy meeting has ended. Soon, there will be people leading you to where the radiant redwood is. Let me remind you all not to try any luck. Otherwise, you will be buried there. Don't say I didn't warn you." The eyes of the 10 people brightened. The ancient spirit plant, the radiant redwood, had a massive amount of heaven and earth origin energy that formed its own domain. A single day of cultivation here was comparable to a month outside. It was simply too impatient. Countless people cast envious gazes at them. If one had to point out the only flaw, it would be the black-robed fellow in 10th place. His performance was mediocre, and he had managed to complete the test with some dog's-hit luck. Yet he was able to occupy one of the 10 spots. This was simply outrageous. Immortal Eclipse Valley's actions today are a bit unfair. Even so, the chances were given by Immortal Eclipse Valley, so taking one is justifiable. It's because of this that the crowd is so calm, otherwise the participating cultivators wouldn't have agreed. This brat called Qinyu, he really is lucky. As they discussed, although their voices weren't loud, it was clear enough in the ears of the cultivators present. Of the 9 people that won, many of them looked at Qinyu with disdain and indifference. Qinyu lowered his head as if he hadn't noticed anything. Since he had already obtained some benefits, there was no need to provoke the crowd any further. Whoosh, whoosh, 2 golden core cultivators flew over and greeted Eclipse Xian. They seemed to have a bit of a grudge against Daoist Wang. They glanced at him and then withdrew their gazes. "Follow me." With that, the 2 golden core cultivators were about to leave. Suddenly, the blue dome of heaven rumbled and roared. The winds and clouds surged, sinking into darkness. A giant, pitch-black arm pressed down, black scales surging with demonic energy. 2 immortal Eclipse Valley golden cores that were flying in the air suddenly had their cold and arrogant faces shatter. With miserable cries, they were sent flying away like broken kites. Bang! The earth trembled as 7 pillars of light soared into the sky, forming the shape of the Big Dipper. The golden 8 trigrams soared into the sky and collided with the pitch-black giant arm. The deafening sound was like the roar of thunder. Countless cultivators groaned, and their faces turned pale. Those with weaker cultivations had blood seeping out of their mouths and noses. Shwa, shwa, shwa. 3 silhouettes appeared in the 9 heavens. Demonic qi billowed around them, and each of them exuded an earth-shattering aura that would cause one's soul to tremble. Love, go small, say neck-nascent soul demonic cultivators, and 3 of them at that. Immortal Eclipse Valley has overestimated your abilities. You actually dare to block the momentum of my demonic path? Today, I will have your blood flow for 1,000 miles, and not even a chicken or dog will be spared. With the support of their powerful cultivations, their voices echoed throughout Immortal Eclipse Valley. The 3 demonic path, nascent souls, lifted their hands and pressed downwards. The giant pitch-black arm violently erupted. The golden 8 trigrams phantom trembled. With a loud cracking sound, cracks began to appear, as if it were about to collapse. Humph! My Immortal Eclipse Valley is not a place where you can run wild. A silver-haired old man appeared. His robes fluttered in the wind, and his aura could topple mountains and overturn seas. He was the powerhouse that had driven away the purple-back bluewing ants that day. He formed a series of hand seals, and a flying sword flew through the air, falling into his hand. He lifted his hand and pointed it towards the heavens. Hum! Hum! A heaven-shaking sword cry reverberated through the world. Countless sword phantoms appeared, numbering in the tens of thousands. They howled through the air like a roaring sea, their momentum horrifying to the extreme. Bang! The golden 8 trigrams phantom shattered, and the giant pitch-black arm came crashing down. Countless sword phantoms shot into the skies, cutting down on the giant arm. Sparks flew in all directions as the arm was trapped, unable to move. The 3 demonic path nascent souls roared out loud. Demonic energy rose up from the giant black arm, and it violently swept out, smashing apart the countless sword phantoms as its momentum rose. The silver-haired old man's eyes brightened. Today, I will let you know just how deep the inheritance of my immortal eclipse valley has been. 5-element sword array rise. Between the heavens and earth, the number of sword phantoms rose. White, blue, black, red, and yellow divine light burst forth, forming a giant wheel. As it spun, endless spiritual strength formed a tide. Shwa! 5-colored divine light swept past. The giant black arm froze for a moment before loudly collapsing. Puff! An arm fell off and blood rained down. It was unknown which demonic path nascent soul had their arm cut off, but they still roared out in pain. Immortal Eclipse Valley, I will return the enmity of your severed arm 10 times over. Bang! Demonic energy erupted. It tore through the 5-colored divine light and tore through the skies. The silver-haired old man coldly snorted. He loosened his grip, and the flying sword held away. The sword phantoms and 5-colored divine light that filled the skies vanished with it. Shwa! The silver-haired old man's figure vanished. In a moment, a great battle at the nascent soul level had come to an end. Taoist Wang clenched his fists, excitement and sadness in his eyes. Nascent soul realm. This was the nascent soul realm. What a pity! Eclipse XN patted his old friend's shoulder. He stepped forwards and said, "That's enough. The evil spirits have been forced back by the seniors in the valley. There is no need to worry." He waved his hand, and Immortal Eclipse Valley disciples immediately rushed out to maintain order and treat the injured cultivators. In front of Alchemy Mountain, the proud victors all had dignified expressions. Although the battle at the nascent soul level had only lasted for a short period of time, it had allowed them to experience what it meant to be a true powerhouse. They were still far too far away from this level. This wasn't the first time that Chinyu had witnessed the might of a nascent soul. But on that day, he had borrowed the power of storm flow to self-destruct and then used the blood escape art to escape. He hadn't truly fought them. Today's might, if he were to even slightly touch it, would be enough to kill him where he stood. Nascent soul. He had no idea when he would be able to reach this boundary. Taking a deep breath, Chinyu's eyes filled with determination. In the end, he had to walk his cultivation one step at a time. There was no meaning in biting off more than he could chew. With a little blue lamp in hand, as long as he was careful and diligent in his cultivation, even though the nascent soul realm was difficult, he would still be able to step into it. Without realizing it, after experiencing this storm, Chinyu's state of mind had become much calmer and more tenacious. The 2 golden cores had been heavily injured by the aura of the demonic path nascent souls and had been sent away to recuperate. But Immortal Eclipse Valley had their own rules. They had said that they would be sent to where the radiant redwood was today, and even though they had just been attacked by 3 demonic path nascent souls, they didn't change their mind. Soon a new guide arrived. They brought Chinyu and the others to the core valley of Immortal Eclipse Valley. This caused the fear and uncertainty in the hearts of the people to rapidly stabilize. It had an extremely comforting effect. Immortal Eclipse Valley was heavily guarded, and the restrictive arrays were formidable. The Great Five Elements Sword Array just now was proof. Even though there were people leading the way with jade slips, they could still feel a cold chill in certain places, making their hair stand on end. Schwa. Not too far from the core valley, a group of people landed and began to walk. Fog filled the air, making it impossible to see left and right. As they walked in, the fog tumbled and there was a faint rumbling sound. The Immortal Eclipse Valley cultivator leading the way solemnly reminded them, "Follow closely behind us and pay attention to your steps. Don't make any mistakes, otherwise it will be very troublesome." There was no need to remind them. The 10 people behind them were all cautious. Although they didn't know what was in the fog, none of them wanted to take a look. After a moment, they passed through the fog region. The cultivator, leading the way, let out a sigh of relief. "We've arrived. Double monthly ticket if you think this chapter is wonderful. Then please support us. You can also vote for us. 100 vertical and horizontal coins to draw a monthly ticket, 500 vertical and horizontal coins, 10,000 vertical and horizontal coins, 1,000,000 vertical and horizontal coins to be the Alliance Master." Chapter 69. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. There was a narrow entrance on the mountain wall in front of him. It was extremely steep, as if it had been cut open by a sword. The greenish-black rock was exposed outside, glowing with a metallic luster. "Love, go small," say Nekue stone tablet, stood outside the entrance. It was more than 10 feet tall, and on it was written, "Forbidden area, no trespassing." Perhaps because Immortal Eclipse Valley was confident that no one would be able to break into this place, there were no cultivators standing guard outside the valley. The guide took several steps forwards and carefully took out a jade card from his chest. As if it had sensed something, the jade tablet lit up on its own and flew out of his hand, landing at the entrance of the mountain wall. Ripples appeared in the air, gentle and light, like a gentle breeze blowing through a still lake. Qin Yu's heart chilled, and he froze where he was. If one were to come into contact with these ripples without any preparation, then one would probably be instantly torn into pieces and perish. The divine sense of an alchemist was stronger than that of an ordinary cultivator. At this moment, the expressions of the 9 people beside him were extremely stiff. No, there was one exception. It was the mysterious cultivator surrounded by eerie energy. He was incomparably calm, even calmer than before. The ripples dispersed. The leading cultivator turned and said, "The radiant red wood is in the valley. After entering, you cannot use your magic power without permission. Remember this." He walked in first, and Qin Yu was the last to enter the narrow entrance between the mountain walls. After walking for a dozen or so meters, the view suddenly opened up. What appeared in front of them was a valley about 5 or 6 miles in size. However, at this time, no one was in the mood to observe their surroundings. Everyone's attention was attracted by an ancient tree that supported the heavens in the center of the valley. It was nearly 300 meters tall, and its trunk was so thick that it would take 7 or 8 people to wrap their arms around it. The thick roots that were exposed were like a large hand that was tightly grasping the earth. The crown of the tree covered almost half of the valley. Crimson divine light was emitted from the trunk, and leaves, filling every inch of one's line of sight. It was bright and dazzling like a ball of flames that had been burning fiercely since ancient times, causing the dark red, jade-like fruits on the branches to become even more alluring. An ancient and rich aura of vicissitudes, accompanied by the smell of the passage of time, caused everyone to instinctively feel awe. Radiant redwood. This was radiant redwood. The leading cultivator's eyes were filled with envy. He turned around and said, "This is a rare opportunity. You must grasp it carefully and not miss it." Bang! A wild aura suddenly erupted. A figure rushed out from the crowd. With a flick of his sleeves, black blood, crows, rushed towards the radiant redwood like locusts. It was that person. Qin Yu was startled. The leading cultivator's complexion sank before turning into a sneer. He allowed Qin Yu to rush towards the radiant red wood without hindering him. Hum! Hum! The sound of vibrating wings filled the air. Swarms of insects flew up from the radiant redwood. Before this, they had been covered by the divine red light and couldn't be seen. These were the purple-backed blue-wing ants that had eaten the 3 golden cores. After they were awakened, they were enraged to the extreme. They hurtled towards the black-blood crow, tearing it apart and swallowing it whole. The person that rushed out frowned. With a loud shout, his body ignited with a blood-red light, and his speed suddenly rose, avoiding the swarm of ants and crashing into the radiant redwood. A deafening explosion rang out as terrifying energy fluctuations erupted. The cultivator had actually self-destructed. The thick trunk of the radiant redwood faintly trembled. A rich red divine light surged out like water, dispersing all of the impact force. Even the explosive power of a golden core wasn't able to harm the radiant redwood in the least. The leading cultivator's complexion changed. After the purple-backed blue-wing ants flew back to the radiant redwood, he said in a low voice, "You have 1 month. Once the time is up, you must leave. If you exceed the time limit, you will be attacked by the purple-backed blue-wing ants. You should be well aware of what will happen to you." As he finished speaking, he turned and left. It was absolutely unusual for the radiant redwood to suffer a suicidal attack. He had to report this matter as soon as possible. The valley fell silent. Looking at the radiant redwood, several people felt a bit of lingering fear. In the blink of an eye, their companion had died without a grave. Although he had been the one to seek death on his own initiative, it still left their minds shaken. Of course, the fear they felt towards the purple-backed blue-wing ants was also one of the reasons they didn't dare to move forwards. They had personally witnessed how terrifying these ancient spirit insects were. As they thought about how close they were to the radiant redwood, they couldn't help but feel their scalps tingle. "Everyone, there is no need to worry. Since Immortal Eclipse Valley arranged for us to come here, they have already made their own preparations. There is no need to worry too much." The flowing river sex, Wang Zifeng slowly said. He was handsome and had an extraordinary bearing. In refining the soul-shrouding pill, he had been ranked 3rd. "That's right. A month will pass in the blink of an eye. Since you and I have come here, we can't just waste our time like this." Among the 9 people, 2 Golden Core Realm alchemists glanced at each other and then stepped forwards. They each occupied a relatively spacious area beneath the radiant redwood. As Golden Core cultivators, they naturally wouldn't lower themselves to entangle themselves with a group of juniors. Wang Zifeng turned around. "Junior apprentice, Sister Xueqing, how about we go over there together?" Yun Xueqing shook her head. "I thank Senior Apprentice Brother Wang for his good intentions, but I will cultivate by myself." The 9 Revolution Golden Pill that this woman refined was ranked 7th. Although it was ranked near the back, her otherworldly beauty was enough to make her the most dazzling one. Wang Zifeng's smile didn't diminish. "That's fine too. Junior Apprentice Sister can choose first." He swept his eyes behind him and coldly said, "Everyone, the 2 seniors have already chosen. With Junior Apprentice Sister Yin, how about we choose the rest in order? Of course, someone will be last." "Good. Then we'll do as Brother Wang says." "Sure. Someone will be last." Wang Zifeng's lips curved in disdain. He found Qin Yu extremely displeasing to the eye. This was because Qin Yu had taken the back door, and also because he had once asked Taoist Wang to help him. But Qin Yu had instead refused him. Yun Xueqing glanced at Qin Yu and said, "I am indebted to fellow Taoists for allowing me to choose. Xueqing thanks you all." Then she floated towards the radiant redwood. Wang Zifeng landed not too far away from her. The other 5 people also quickly chose their own spots. Almost all of them were close to the radiant redwood. A certain someone quietly found a corner and closed his eyes to cultivate. As for anger or anything like that, he simply wasn't in the mood. Qin Yu closed his eyes and entered into a state of cultivation. As his cultivation method revolved, his pores opened and he began to absorb the surrounding spiritual strength. For the first time, he felt the joy of rapidly absorbing spiritual strength with his own ability. Of course, this speed was only relatively speaking. Immortal Eclipse Valley, Core Valley area. In a grand hall, two figures were sitting across from each other. Clouds and mist swirled around them, incomparably mystical. A disciple just came to report that a golden core snuck into Immortal Eclipse Valley and detonated themselves to attack the radiant redwood. The person on the left quietly said. He paused for a moment and then continued to say, in addition, there is something strange about fellow Taoist Jiangli controlling the 5-element sword array to repel the 3 demonic path demons. It seems they have no intention of fighting for a long time. The old man on the other side had a dark red between his eyebrows, as if a bloody infernal energy lingered around him. My Immortal Eclipse Valley has 1,000 years of inheritance, so why would we fear some trifling evil demons? Pass down the order to strengthen the vigilance and respond to all changes. I want to see just what sort of plot these demonic path rats have up their sleeves. The person on the left thought for a moment and nodded. That's all we can do for now. Rumble, rumble, rumble. With a deep rumbling sound, 9 spiritual vortexes appeared beneath the radiant redwood. The spiritual vortexes of the 2 golden core realm alchemists were the largest. But if one ignored their cultivation and purely compared the speed at which they absorbed spiritual strength, Wang Zifeng, Yun Xueqing, and another stern-faced man were the fastest. The other 3 were a bit worse, but their performance wasn't bad either. Qin Yu was a bit shabby. His vortex had only slightly condensed. He simply wasn't on the same level as the others. As several people saw this from the corner of their eyes, they couldn't help but feel a trace of contempt in their hearts. Indeed, this was someone who had entered through the back door. They had no idea just what Taoist Wang saw in him. Qin Yu had long since given up on his own talent. After feeling a bit helpless about the situation, he calmed himself down. He could sense the gazes on him, but he didn't care at all. Without accident, a month from now, he would smoothly obtain the derived root system of the radiant redwood. By borrowing the power of the little blue lamp, he would soon be able to cultivate a mature radiant redwood. At that time, he would eat 1 radiant red fruit and throw it away. Today, he would sleep on the tree, and tomorrow he would sleep under the tree. He could use it however he wanted. Was this something you people could compare with? Time quietly passed. The radiant redwood formed its own domain, and its ability to accelerate one's cultivation could be called astonishing. As time passed, more and more people made breakthroughs. Even the 2 golden core realm cultivators each rose a level. As everyone was immersed in this state, unwilling to wake up, countless compound eyes suddenly lit up on the radiant redwood. The sound of fluttering wings echoed through the valley. The 2 golden core realm alchemists angrily opened their eyes. But in the next moment, they were frightened out of their wits. The countless eyes above their heads were glaring at them. They silently calculated in their hearts and discovered that a month had already passed like this. They couldn't help but be disappointed. It's actually been a month. I didn't feel anything at all. It would be great if we could continue cultivating like this. Sighing again and again, several people stood up. From their posture, it was clear that the purple-back blue-wing ants weren't joking around. If they didn't leave in time, they really would be eaten up by them. In a month, Wang Zifeng had broken through 3 boundaries and reached perfection of foundation establishment. He was just a fine line away from reaching golden core. His figure flickered, and he arrived beside Yun Xueqing. He cupped his hands across his chest and said, "Junior apprentice Sister Xueqing, congratulations." Yun Xueqing had also broken through 3 boundaries and reached the 9th level of foundation establishment. She was just a bit worse than him. With such a harvest, even someone as indifferent as Yun Xueqing couldn't help but smile. Senior apprentice Brother Wang, congratulations. Wang Zifeng's smile widened. My father has already reached an agreement with Immortal Eclipse Valley. As long as I can enter the top 10, I can cultivate here for half a year and study the Tao of Alchemy. Junior sister Xueqing, will you stay? Yun Xueqing nodded. I will also be staying in Immortal Eclipse Valley for half a year. Wang Zifeng clapped his hands. That's great. In the future, you and I will have to help each other. The voice of an Immortal Eclipse Valley cultivator echoed out from outside the valley. A month has passed. Hurry up and come out. Wang Zifeng smiled. He lifted his hand and gestured. Junior apprentice, Sister Xueqing, please. Yun Xueqing nodded. Just as she was about to step forwards, she suddenly frowned. That person, Wang Zifeng turned his head and coldly sneered. It's impossible for him not to hear the flapping of the purple-back blue-wing ants. Since he doesn't want to wake up, that's his own choice. Yun Xueqing thought for a moment and shook her head. In the end, we are still acquaintances, she loudly said. Fellow Taoist Qin Yu, a month has passed. Shua, all eyes gathered on him. Qin Yu was helpless. If they didn't leave, how would he have the chance to dig out the radiant redwood's roots and then have designs on the purple-back blue-wing ants? But Yun Xueqing had good intentions. He could only open his eyes and smile to express his gratitude before closing them again. Wang Zifeng said coldly, You don't know what's good for you. Junior apprentice, Sister Xueqing, don't worry about him. Let's go. Yun Xueqing glanced at him once more. She nodded and walked out of the valley. She had already warned him, but he still didn't want to leave. That was his own choice. With 2 Golden Core Realm alchemists leading the way, the 8 of them left the range of the radiant redwood. A strength suddenly gushed out from the void, pulling them out of the valley. It was still the person who had brought them here. He swept his eyes around and frowned. How come we're missing someone? Wang Zifeng cupped his hands together. Reporting to Senior Apprentice Brother Qi, we have already warned him, but he still doesn't want to leave. We can only let him stay behind. Qi Jiang shouted out, What nonsense! He is simply seeking death. He formed a law formula with his hands and was about to forcefully pull that person out. But at this time there was the sound of flapping wings. Even standing outside the valley, one could feel a fierce and ominous energy rushing towards them. Qi Jiang sighed and released his law formula. It's too late. The purple-back blue-wing ants had a cruel and violent temperament. After being suppressed by Immortal Eclipse Valley for a month, they had already reached their limit. Now that they had regained their freedom, they would immediately tear Qin Yu to pieces. The Radiant Red would have the ability to accelerate one's cultivation. To cultivators, especially those that didn't progress too quickly, the temptation was 10 times or even 100 times stronger than drugs. Even for those from Immortal Eclipse Valley, there are many people who entered the Radiant Red to cultivate over the years. Because they weren't willing to leave in time, they were eventually swallowed up by the purple-back blue-wing ants. Qi Jiang shook his head. Let's go. This place will soon be sealed again. The group stepped into the range of the fog. The clouds surged, and they vanished from sight. Hum! Hum! An invisible imprisoning strength erupted from the valley. The surrounding 10 miles were sealed away once more. Hashtag, 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 hashtag double monthly tickets have begun. I'm begging you to give me monthly tickets. Double monthly tickets. If you think this chapter is wonderful, then please support me. You can also give me monthly tickets. 100 crosstalk coins to draw monthly tickets, 500 crosstalk coins, 10,000 crosstalk coins, 100,000 crosstalk coins to be the Alliance Master. Chapter 70. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. A month had passed. Most of the defeated cultivators and their families and friends had already left. They had already lost. And if they were to look at other people's great gains, wouldn't that be adding to their own frustrations? The overcrowded situation of Immortal Eclipse Valley eased a little. Even so, when the group flew out of the core region, there were still countless cultivators waiting with bated breath. It's senior brother Wang Xiao. Heavens, he's already at the peak of Foundation establishment. A female cultivator from the Jianlu sect screamed, her face full of surprise and admiration. Senior sister Yun Qingxiwe has also reached Foundation establishment level 9. Her aura is rippling like a mirror, which is a sign that our sect's cultivation method is about to make a breakthrough. Senior sister Yun Qingxiwe will be able to reach the golden core within a year. The radiant redwood is truly worthy of being called an ancient spiritual plant. It actually has such an amazing effect. In just a month, they have been completely reborn. Even the auras of those 2 golden core seniors have become much more formidable. Sigh, I was so close to becoming one of the 10 and obtaining this natural luck. I can't accept this. I really can't accept this. Someone lamented bitterly. He was indeed just a little bit off. He was only eliminated in the first round. A cultivator sneered. At the side, the female cultivator, who had a look of worship on her face, snorted coldly when she heard this, her face full of contempt. He flew into a rage out of shame and ridiculed Immortal Eclipse Valley again and again. Immediately, obscenities flew out. If it weren't for him having misgivings about Immortal Eclipse Valley's punishment, he feared he would have already attacked. Amidst the chaos, Qi Jiao was not in the mood to watch the show. Her face was slightly pale as she looked at the group of people flying towards her, her fingers tightly intertwined. There was no Qi knew. Did something happen? Could it be that they had designs on the radiant redwood and had been discovered by Immortal Eclipse Valley? Shua. A group of people descended. The Immortal Eclipse Valley cultivators told them not to reveal any information and then left. Wang Zixiao, Yun Qingxiwe, and the others were instantly overwhelmed by the crowd. Ah, so someone tried to destroy the radiant redwood, and it's even someone at the Golden Core realm who is hiding their cultivation. Unfortunately, even if they blew themselves up, they wouldn't be able to shake the radiant redwood in the least. No wonder only 8 out of 10 people came back. Could the other person be a helper who also wanted to destroy the radiant redwood? That's not it. A cultivator from the Flowing River sect had a look of contempt. That Qinyu who entered through the back door wasn't able to withstand the temptation of the radiant redwood. A month has passed and he still hasn't come out. By now, he has been torn to pieces by the radiant redwood's guardian spirit insects, the purple-back blue-wing ants. Ah, so it's him. Serves him right. He doesn't have the qualifications. Even if he were to force his way in, he would only be throwing his life away. Qi Jiao's body shook and her face turned pale. He held a great sun mulberry leaf in each of his hands. Under the illumination of the golden sunlight, the leaves seemed to be made of gold. The purple-back blue-wing ants were naturally violent and cruel by nature. Beads of sweat dripped down Qin Yu's forehead. He restrained his aura and didn't reveal the least bit of malice. After an unknown period of time, the swarm of ants suddenly separated. An even stronger purple-back blue-wing ant with faint markings on its body flew out. It coldly glared at Qin Yu. Although it was only a flying ant, it displayed its arrogance to the fullest. This was the Ant King. The purple-back blue-wing ant was different from other ant species. It didn't have a queen specifically responsible for giving birth. When a male and female pair mated, they could give birth to offspring. The strongest purple-back blue-wing ant was the Ant King of the colony. It possessed the highest authority, and all purple-back blue-wing ants had to obey its will. And what was admirable was that the purple-back blue-wing ant only had a single partner in its life. After its partner died, the other one would quickly commit suicide. Even the Ant King was no exception. The Ant King flew in front of Qin Yu. Its compound eyes gazed deeply at him, making him feel as if he were being seen through. After a moment of hesitation, It fell onto Chinyu's hand and began to tear at the great sun mulberry leaf. As soon as it began to eat, it couldn't stop. After eating a leaf, it flew to another hand and continued to eat. When the 2 mulberry leaves fell into its stomach, the ant king's cicada-like wings began to shiver in excitement. It felt an unprecedented sense of satisfaction and joy. Unfortunately, there were only 2 leaves. Before it could carefully taste them, it had already eaten them clean. It looked up at Chinyu and then flapped its wings, preparing to fly away. There was no longer any need to keep this stupid human around. Chinyu cursed inwardly, but he maintained his composure. He turned his hand and took out 2 more great sun mulberry leaves. The ant king was pleasantly surprised. It lowered its head and chewed on them. Eat, eat, eat. These great sun mulberry leaves had been added to them. The more Chinyu ate, the greater his chances of success would be. To the purple-back blue-wing ants, the aura of the great sun mulberry leaves was 10 times, 100 times more enticing than drugs. Seeing the ant king gorge itself, the ant colony began to stir. Several strong, purple-back blue-wing ants began to stir. They were strong competitors of the ant king and weren't much weaker than it. Finally, one of the competitors couldn't resist the temptation. It flapped its wings and rushed towards the ant king to compete for the great sun mulberry leaves. This was because its instincts told it that as long as it swallowed these mulberry leaves, it had a chance of transforming into a true ant king. The ant king angrily screamed. It flapped its wings and flew away. In the blink of an eye, 2 strong purple-back blue-wing ants began to crazily slaughter each other. The ant colony quickly quieted down. This was a struggle for the throne, a struggle for power. Instinctive awe overwhelmed them. Puff! The ant king bit down on its opponent's head, chewing and eating it. Its wounded body was covered in its own and its opponent's blood. It looked up and screamed, its callous eyes sweeping around. The restless competitors all lowered their heads. The ant colony once more expressed their allegiance to their king. But at this time, the blood on the ant king's body began to wriggle like a living creature. It was like red-hot iron wires were sinking deep into its body. Chinyu rapidly formed hand seals and pointed a finger at the ant king. It screamed in pain and glared at Chinyu with hatred in its eyes. Ah! With an angry scream, the ant colony went berserk. Countless purple-back blue-wing ants rushed forwards. In just a breath of time, they would tear Chinyu to pieces. His complexion didn't change. With a flick of his sleeves, a massive amount of great sun mulberry leaves fell to the ground. The ant colony paused for a moment. Then their instinctive desire overwhelmed them, and they crazily swallowed the mulberry leaves around them. Ah! 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 The ant king's screams became increasingly rapid. The ant colony had no choice but to stop eating. But by the time they flew towards Chinyu once more, it was already too late. With a pitiful scream, all of the ant king's blood drilled into its body. The hatred and ferocity in its eyes vanished, replaced by a look of submission and intimacy. The purple-back blue-wing ants that had rushed towards Chinyu with their jaws wide open froze. They looked at the human in front of them with puzzlement. They couldn't figure out why he had the aura of a king on his body. This caused them to feel awe, not daring to be the least bit presumptuous. Chinyu let out a long breath. His back was already soaked with a cold sweat. Just a little bit more, and he would have been buried in the stomachs of the ants. Luckily, the ancient beast dominion arts records weren't wrong. He had fed the ant great sun mulberry leaves that had been stained with his own blood energy, and then stimulated the blood of the purple-back blue-wing ants to fuse them together to form a soul seal. Once the soul seal was placed in them and their blood energy fused together, the ant king would regard him as the closest person to them. It would follow his orders for the rest of its life and would never abandon him. And once he controlled the ant king, he could control the entire ant colony. This was Chinyu's plan from the very start. The ant king fell into his palm. Its body was the length of a finger, and its surface was covered with a hard carapace. It was cool to the touch, like jade. Chinyu smiled. He gently stroked it with his fingers. The ant king emitted excited cries as it twisted around in his palm. As he thought back to that day when tens of thousands of purple-back blue-wing ants had chased him down and eaten up 3 golden core masters, Chinyu smiled. He waved his hand. Go, let me see your strength. The ant king reared its head back and screamed. Countless purple-back blue-wing ants flew towards it like a dark cloud, destroying everything in its path. The radiant redwood was a self-proclaimed domain that could prevent anyone from approaching it. When a golden core cultivator blew themselves up, they weren't able to damage it in the least. From this, it could be seen just how powerful its defenses were. But now, Chinyu already had the best spies. This ancient spirit plant in front of him was no longer able to defend against him. The ant king's thoughts stirred. It screeched, and the swarm of purple-back blue-wing ants flew back to the radiant redwood. When they returned, they were each holding a bright red fruit that was as beautiful as a flaming gem. Chinyu sat down cross-legged. He took out a radiant red fruit and swallowed it down. The fruit melted in his mouth, and the fresh and sweet taste fell into his stomach. Then a burning heat rose up, spreading through his body. But before he could feel the pain of being burned, this burning heat dissipated into his organs, turning into pure spiritual strength that flowed into his Dantian sea. The effects were even better than the cloud rain pill purified by the little blue lamp. Chinyu opened his eyes, a satisfied smile on his face. But he wasn't in a hurry to cultivate. Instead, he quickly walked over to the base of the radiant redwood. During the past month, he had already found the location of the radiant redwood's derived root according to the medicine codex. The ant king led the swarm of ants over. They dug up the soil and revealed the thick root. Chinyu looked at it several times. This was it. He waved his hand. The ant king led the swarm of ants to the root and began to tear at its surface. The purple-back blue-wing ants could even tear apart the protective magic power of a golden core cultivator. It could be seen just how powerful their destructive strength was. But even so, it was incomparably difficult to destroy the radiant redwood's root. One could even hear the sound of teeth grinding against the root. And what was strange was that whether it was the root fragments that were torn off or the root itself, not a single drop of juice flowed out. It was like a layer of camouflage. A moment later, when the swarm of ants dispersed, all that was left of the thick root was the core. It was a tender and fiery red color and had tiny root hairs. This was the true derived root of the radiant redwood. The ant king personally moved. It followed the directions of Chinyu's divine sense and bit down on the root. Walala! The radiant redwood trembled and swayed. A rich, red divine light erupted. Luckily, Chinyu was already prepared and had retreated far away. The red divine light didn't harm the purple-back blue-wing ants at all. After sweeping through them several times, it reluctantly dispersed. The ant king flew over with the derived root in its mouth. Chinyu took out a deep green jade box and carefully placed it within. Then he stuck a blue jade talisman on it to seal off the loss of its vitality. Only then was he truly able to relax. At this point, the main goal of his trip to Immortal Eclipse Valley had been accomplished. Chinyu smiled. Now it was time to cultivate. The radiant redwood in Immortal Eclipse Valley had lived for countless years, and the heaven and earth spiritual strength it had accumulated could be called terrifying. Even if only a small portion of it was absorbed into the radiant red fruit, it would still be a monstrous good fortune. Moreover, this place had been sealed once more, and no one would come to disturb him. He naturally couldn't miss out on such a good chance to cultivate. As for how to leave, the purple-back blue-wing ants were the key to unlocking the seal. With the key in his hand, whether he stayed or left was completely up to him. Double monthly votes if you think this chapter is wonderful. Then please support me. You can also vote for me. 100 crosstalk coins to draw monthly votes 500 crosstalk coins, 10,000 crosstalk coins, 1,000,000 crosstalk coins as Alliance Master. Chapter 71. Genius in a Second, Remember Love Go. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. Beneath the radiant redwood, Chinyu sat down cross-legged. Magic power surged within his body, rumbling like thunder. Suddenly, his eyes flashed open, and a sharp light erupted from them. His robes fluttered in the wind, and a powerful aura flowed out like mercury, stirring up a great deal of dust. Golden Core second level. As he carefully sensed the formidable strength within his body, Chinyu revealed a smile. But soon he sighed a bit helpless. The radiant red fruit was indeed formidable. It contained extremely pure heaven and earth spiritual strength, allowing one to use it to cultivate at a rapid pace. The fact that he had broken through to the second level of Golden Core in a month was the best proof of this. Unfortunately, the radiant red fruit also had its limits. After swallowing a large amount of it, his body's absorption rate slowed down. This wasn't because he had developed a resistance, but because his mortal body couldn't withstand the baptism of high purity spiritual strength for too long. The reason Chinyu was able to persist for a month was because his mortal body was formidable. If it were an ordinary early Golden Core cultivator, a week would be their limit. Luckily, this sort of bodily fatigue would naturally recover after resting for a period of time. At most, it would take a month. Unfortunately, this would reduce his cultivation speed by half. Well, if other Golden Core cultivators knew what Chinyu was thinking right now, they would want to strangle him to death and curse him for being unreasonable. In the following period of time, Chinyu didn't waste any time because he stopped cultivating. The strength of the ancient Beast Dominion art had already been proven when he controlled the purple-back blue-wing ants. There was also the Medicine Codex that contained a myriad of information about alchemy. He needed to spend a great deal of time and effort to study and perceive it. Although he might not be able to use it, just a tiny bit of it might be of use in the future, and he might obtain an unexpected harvest or even save his life. Of course, these were all things that would happen later, but it was always good to have more skills. Chinyu immersed himself in the two vast ancient texts, chewing on them with relish. A month later, Chinyu resumed his cultivation. After being raised by the great sun mulberry, the Ant King was clearly much stronger. Its body was already larger than its competitors, and its wings fluttered with energy. It was extremely close to Chinyu. After receiving its master's orders, it immediately sent out a massive number of subordinates to pick the radiant red fruits, piling them up into a small hill on the ground. Looking at the Ant King that had come up to him to ask for a reward, Chinyu smiled and took out several great sun mulberry leaves. This fellow was so excited that snot nearly popped out of its nose. It turned and glared at the pitiful eyes of its fellow tribesmen before picking them up and eating them in large bites. For the time being, he only provided the great sun mulberry to the Ant King because he needed it to control the entire ant colony. Otherwise, once the other purple-back blue-wing ants broke into the king's steppe, they would automatically separate into a new colony. At that time, it would be very troublesome. Since he had decided to attack, Chinyu didn't plan on showing any mercy. He didn't have the ability to take away the radiant redwood, but he could take away all of the purple-back blue-wing ants. Love, go, small, say, Nekka with every increase in the Golden Core realm. A cultivator's strength would clearly increase. If there was a difference of more than 2 levels, the weak basically had no hope of winning. This was except for those with powerful inheritances and bloodlines. Of course, freaks like Chinyu were also an exception. All of this was to make it clear that the cultivation of the Golden Core stage was extremely difficult. Even in the relatively easy early stage of the Golden Core stage, being able to advance 1 stage in 3 years was already considered outstanding. Even with the radiant red fruits as a cheat, Chinyu had no choice but to do this 3 times in order to step into the 3rd level of the Golden Core. This had taken him nearly 5 months. With the radiant red fruits freely available and the radiant red wood at all times, Qin Yu secretly blushed. The 2 golden cores that came with him hadn't eaten anything at all and had easily advanced in a month. In comparison, his martial talent was terrible to the point of being horrifying. If it weren't for the little blue lamp, then he would have been doomed to spend the rest of his life as a grass root. The world was vast and full of wonders. If even a heaven-defying treasure like the little blue lamp existed, then there had to be something that could improve one's martial talent. If he had a chance in the future, he definitely had to obtain it. Everyone had the dream of being a top student in their hearts. Qin Yu shook his head and gathered his thoughts. He had already stayed in this valley for half a year. Although no one had come to disturb him, it was inevitable that he would be discovered if he continued. To be able to break through to the 2nd level of the Golden Core realm could already be considered a considerable harvest. Knowing when to stop and withdraw was also an excellent choice. But as he looked at the tree full of radiant red fruits, he couldn't help but feel his heart ache. Everyone knew that being greedy wasn't good, but who could really decisively withdraw in front of such a temptation? There were those who were calm and decisive, but most of them were just trash-talking. Perhaps the heavens had sensed Qin Yu's hesitation and made a choice for him. In the dusky skies above the valley, winds and clouds began to surge. An invisible pressure fell on Qin Yu's chest like a mountain. Even with his 3rd-level golden core cultivation, his heart tightened and he found it hard to breathe. The purple-back blue-wing ants anxiously screamed. They shook their wings, but didn't dare to fly out from the radiant redwood. Through the soul seal, Qin Yu could feel the Ant King's fear. Just what had happened that could cause the purple-back blue-wing ants, who could easily kill golden cores, to be so panic-stricken. Bang! The radiant redwood shook. A rich red light erupted from every part of the tree like flames, dyeing the entire valley red. The originally warm and auspicious halo of light was now scarlet red, as if it were dripping blood, cold and harsh. On the branches, the radiant red fruits began to wither and fall to the ground. They were originally condensed from pure spiritual strength, but at this critical moment they turned into spiritual strength to supplement themselves. Love, go, little, say, Netku in the skies, flames rose up between the winds and clouds, blazing and burning. Even from a great distance, one could still feel the terrifying heat. This was the manifestation of the radiant red wood's domain. It was unknown just what had happened, but this ancient spirit plant didn't hesitate to expand its domain to such a massive range, as if it was rejecting the arrival of some terrifying existence. As this thought appeared, Qin Yu felt as if he had fallen into an icy lake. He couldn't imagine just what existence could make the radiant redwood so nervous. And the key point was that he was still here. What was called a fire at the city gates, bringing disaster to the fish in the moat? Qin Yu finally understood what it meant today. He had hesitated, but now he couldn't leave even if he wanted to. Qin Yu clenched his teeth and stood up. This simple movement caused his complexion to pale. He gasped for breath and staggered towards the edge of the valley. If this existence could brazenly attack without regard for Immortal Eclipse Valley, then it was clear that it was aiming for the radiant redwood. The further he went, the safer he would be. This was the only thing he could think of. As for what happened afterwards, he could only take things one step at a time. With a loud explosion, it was like the heavens were collapsing and the earth was sinking in. Qin Yu's scalp tingled. He looked up and saw that the blazing skies were really cracking apart. The radiant redwood violently shook and countless red leaves burst apart. Its domain had been forcefully broken, and it had clearly received a tremendous impact. But at this time, an even more terrifying scene appeared. From the crack in the skies, a great white bone hand stretched out. It was thousands of feet long, icy cold and crystalline like jade, and it released monstrous flames. With just a glance, Qin Yu's mind was seized. He froze where he was. In his mind, a great hand broke through space and grasped at him. Puff! Yu spat out a mouthful of blood. A stabbing pain tore through his mind like a saber was cutting into it. He staggered and his eyes filled with shock. Without pause, the great white bone hand grabbed towards the radiant redwood, as if it wanted to uproot it. Walala! The radiant redwood's branches swayed and red divine light surged outwards. But in front of the great white bone hand, it didn't have the slightest strength to resist at all. It was easily broken apart and crushed. Just as the great white bone hand was about to grab the radiant redwood, a figure suddenly appeared. He wore a white robe and had the bearing of a transcendent immortal. Facing the monstrous white bone hand, he thrust out a finger. Like divine thunder from the highest heavens, a terrifying collision set off boundless shock waves. Yu was sent flying away, blood flowing out from his head. Countless cracks appeared on his body. If it weren't for his powerful body, he would have shattered to pieces. The great white bone hand trembled and turned into motes of crystal light that vanished. Laughter echoed out from the crack in the skies. Pale Crucible, it seems I have underestimated you. You have become even stronger these past years. The white-robed Taoist had a light expression. Demon Monarch praises me too much. The reason I was able to fight you to a draw was because I borrowed the strength of the divine wood. Ha ha ha, you are quite direct. Unfortunately, you never take a single step out of Immortal Eclipse Valley. Even if I wanted to kill you, I couldn't. Pale Crucible looked up, his eyes shining like stars. I don't know whether or not the Demon Monarch can kill me, but if you don't leave now, you won't have another chance. Rumble, rumble. Deep rumbling sounds rang out from all directions. Immortal Eclipse Valley's Great Array Formation was already revolving. Once it erupted with its full strength, even a nascent soul cultivator wouldn't be able to escape. The Demon Monarch sighed. Your radiant red wood is quite good. What a pity, Shua! A white bone hand grasped at Yu. Compared to when it grabbed at the radiant redwood, it was over 100 times weaker. Even so, it was more than enough to deal with a golden core cultivator. At the very least, at this moment, Yu's body stiffened as if he had been locked onto by a vicious beast, let alone escaping. He couldn't even form a thought. Ah! The Ant King atop the radiant redwood screamed. It could feel its master in danger and recklessly flapped its wings, rushing towards the white bone hand. There seemed to be a sigh in his ears. The earth violently disintegrated and a thick root broke through the earth, colliding with the white bone hand. The root broke into countless pieces, and the white bone hand was temporarily blocked. Pale Crucible had already caught up. He lightly said, It looks like the Demon Monarch is very curious about my Immortal Eclipse Valley's Great Array Formation. Then don't leave. In the skies, the crack rapidly closed. The Demon Monarch sneered and his aura vanished from sight. Pale Crucible didn't underestimate Yu. Once the Great Array Formation completely revolved, he scattered the swift and fierce aura around him. His ruddy face paled a little and his wrinkles seemed to deepen. He turned to look at Yu, his eyes bright and piercing. Yu was dripping with sweat. He felt as if he had just left a wolf's den and entered a tiger's mouth. His mouth moved, and he discovered that his throat was parched to the point where he couldn't speak a single word. Pale Crucible's complexion gradually became strange. His fingers began to move, as if he were a god on the side of the road. He glanced at Yu from time to time, his eyes becoming increasingly bright. Suddenly he sighed and said, The will of the heavens, I have never had a true disciple in my life, but I never thought I would encounter one today. Boy, are you willing to take me as your master? Like a bolt of lightning had struck his head. Yu's entire body went numb. All the countless thoughts of begging for mercy in his mind suddenly vanished. Are you sure you didn't take the wrong script? This was a solemn, cruel, and rigorous fantasy cultivation drama. So where did this sort of brainless melodramatic plot come from? Pale Crucible blushed red as he was stared at by Yu. He coughed and said, Boy, don't let your imagination run wild. You've only seen a little of the vastness of this world. Come with me and leave this place first." As he spoke, he flicked his sleeves, and the two of them vanished from sight. The Ant King was enraged. Just as it was about to chase after them, the radiant red would erupted with a divine light that swept it back into the crown of the tree. The collapsed earth began to wriggle like a living creature. After several breaths of time, all the cracks vanished and all the broken leaves and branches were buried. The mountain valley returned to tranquility. Chapter 72. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go? To provide you with wonderful novels to read. At this time, as Chinyu sat in Pill Crucible's dwelling that was surrounded by lingering clouds and mist, he still didn't know who he was. But he could tell that this person was someone with an extremely high status in Immortal Eclipse Valley. If he could directly confront the demonic Path's Saint Monarch, how could he be ordinary? After such a person discovered him, he didn't interrogate him or condemn him, but instead asked him if he wanted to take him as his teacher? How could this be so strange? Qin Yu's heart was empty, and he didn't feel like his feet were firmly planted on the ground. He tried several times, but couldn't calm his heart. He was still panicking, and the wine he drank was tasteless. He subconsciously swept his eyes around. Pill Crucible was wild and unruly, without any of the strength of character he had when he confronted the demon monarch. It was like his spine had been pulled out of him. He slumped back onto the couch, his blurred eyes sweeping over Chinyu. "Brat, don't blame me for not reminding you. The 5-element sword array beneath your feet is in an active state. If you casually rush in hiccup, you should be well aware of the result." Chinyu lowered his head and gulped down more wine, no longer looking at the beautiful clouds and scenery. What happened to the most basic trust between people? This was too excessive. He had actually disguised himself so well that he hadn't noticed anything at all. If he really wanted to escape while he was drunk, wasn't that the same as committing suicide? This was too excessive. Pill Crucible smiled in satisfaction. He patted Chinyu's shoulder and said, "Don't be so depressed, brat. It's already not easy for you to be alive. Hurry up and take me as your teacher, and everything from before will be written off. Otherwise, I will hand you over tomorrow. I believe that although my Immortal Eclipse Valley is a righteous sect, there are still many people with dark and eccentric habits. For instance, that crazy old man from the Crimson Furnace likes to throw people in to raise the temperature of the furnace. Of course, he won't let you go in and die. He will burn for 8 or 9 days until all the fat in your flesh, blood, organs, and marrow is completely burned away. Only then will he give you a quick death. Hee, really, you definitely won't like that taste. So hurry up and make the right decision." Qin Yu's lips twitched. To threaten someone in such a superficial manner, there really wasn't any artistic content at all. To think that he had worshipped you a little at first. Pill Crucible curled his lips. "Don't worship me. It's because there are too many people who worship me that I am forced to live in such a place. Every time I go out, I have to look like an idiot. How could that be as comfortable as I am now?" Qin Yu's eyes widened. Pill Crucible laughed. "Are you afraid now? Let me tell you, brat, this old man has cultivated the mind-reading technique. You can't hide any of your schemes from me." Qin Yu composed himself. If Senior really could read minds, then when the demon monarch tried to capture me, he wouldn't have needed the divine tree to save me. Pill Crucible choked on his wine and coughed for a long time, his face flushing red. "Little children, why are you thinking so much? It's disrespectful to expose the old, don't you understand?" Qin Yu laid down the wine jar and stood up to bow. "Qin, you must first thank Senior for saving my life. Love, go, small, say, Netka, however, Senior, please tell me, why do you want to take me as your disciple? It's not that I don't know what's good for me. It's just that the world is too sinister and full of traps. I'm a shallow disciple, and I'm afraid I'll be consigned to eternal damnation in the future." Pill Crucible glanced at him. Then, do you know that I can make you fall beyond redemption right now? Qin Yu's expression didn't change. If Senior wished, I would have already died countless times over. Pill Crucible laughed and scolded. You little brat! Do you think you have nothing to fear? He furrowed his eyebrows and fell into deep thought. In truth, I can't say why I wanted to take you in as my disciple. It's just that when I first laid eyes on you, I couldn't suppress this thought any longer. In divination techniques in the Southern Empire and Northern Dynasty, if I said I was second, no one would dare to say they were first. You and I do indeed share a master and disciple fate. Qin Yu hesitated. Aren't your words a bit too mysterious? It's like those fortune tellers on the streets trying to trick people, right? Pill Crucible curled his lips. I never thought that a brat like you would have such sharp eyes. You actually saw through me. I came from a fortune teller background. Not bad, not bad. All right, I've said what I needed to say. Now you can decide. Qin Yu knelt down. He didn't think there was anything to be ashamed of. In the face of life or death, what harm was there in kneeling? Moreover, he was facing a great bodhisattva that he couldn't see through no matter what. Perhaps this kneeling would be another lucky chance and good fortune. At this time, Pill Crucible cried out in alarm. His eyes rolled back as if he had been struck by lightning. He flicked his sleeves and looked Qin Yu up and down. Brat, just who are you, and why would you have such a reaction to my status jade slip? Status jade slip? Qin Yu's thoughts stirred. He found this a bit hard to believe. After thinking for a moment, he took out a storage bag from his chest and took out a jade slip. Before he could speak, it was snatched away by Pill Crucible. Pill Crucible looked over it and formed several law formulas. The jade slip began to glow with blue light, condensing into the shape of a furnace. Pill Crucible was stunned. Qin Yu blinked his eyes and finally grasped a bit of his train of thought. This jade slip was one of Tsang Mangzi's relics that he had obtained from the underground space beneath the Eastern Mountain Sect's pill disposal department. Could it be related to Immortal Eclipse Valley? Heavens! Earth! Unfair! How unfair! Pill Crucible suddenly erupted, a crazed expression on his face. How many years has it been? I've finally found a boy that's pleasing to the eye. Just as I was about to pass down my legacy to him, someone actually beat me to it. If it was anyone else who dared to do this, I would have made him unable to take care of himself for the rest of his life. But why did it have to be that damned teacher whom I have never met before? My life, why is it so bitter? Please drag out this sentence and say it like an opera. Qin Yu's complexion paled. As he looked at Pill Crucible's enraged appearance, he really feared that if Pill Crucible went berserk, he would implicate him and cause him to lose his life. Whoosh, whoosh. Several figures tore through the air as if they were facing a great enemy, and their auras were extremely fierce. Pill Crucible stomped his feet and cursed. Why did you all run over here? Who dares to kill me while I hide here? Get out, all of you. The several Immortal Eclipse Valley powerhouses stiffened. They swept their eyes over Qin Yu and fell silent. Then they curled up their bodies and really did roll away, vanishing into the lingering fog. Qin Yu! After cursing and venting his anger, Pill Crucible's complexion was still pale. He retracted the aura he released and returned the jade slip to Qin Yu. His lips twitched and he squeezed out a smile. Little junior apprentice brother, this is the first time we've met. I apologize for my lack of manners. Qin Yu's eyes rolled back in his head. Although he was a bit prepared, he still felt that this matter was even more unreliable. Pill Crucible coughed and took out another jade slip. Junior apprentice brother, there is no need to doubt me. This identity jade slip was passed down to me many years ago by some cough senior before he died. There is an inheritance within that helped me reach my current status. Junior apprentice brother and I are both disciples of teacher, so we should call each other brothers. Qin Yu hurriedly cupped his hands together. This junior doesn't dare. Pale Crucible waved his hand. What do you mean you don't dare? You are my junior apprentice brother, so you are my junior apprentice brother. From today onwards, this will not change. All right, you rest here. I will make some arrangements. Tomorrow, I will hold a grand ceremony to prove your name. From now on, you will be my Immortal Eclipse Valley's junior uncle. Whoosh! Pale Crucible flew out from the courtyard. Sure enough, the moment he stepped out, the laziness around him vanished. His back straightened and his robes fluttered in the wind, making him seem dignified to the extreme. Chinyu opened his mouth, but in the end he bitterly smiled. Just what was going on? The next day, the core region of Immortal Eclipse Valley was under martial law. All direct descendants of the Eclipse family and official disciples of the valley received orders to gather at the Pale Hall's Grand Square. This square was 10 miles wide and completely paved with white jade. It undoubtedly displayed the heroic spirit of Immortal Eclipse Valley. Normally, it was rarely opened. It would only be used when there was a major event. Today, it was clear that a major event had occurred. Yesterday, the demonic Path Saint Monarch invaded my Immortal Eclipse Valley and was forced back by the High Ancestor. Such rampant behavior cannot be allowed to be forgotten like this. The demonic path is too arrogant. Do they think that my Immortal Eclipse Valley is the same as the other sects of the Southern Empire and Northern Dynasty, that they can do whatever they want? We will not let this matter rest. That's right. This time we will let the demonic path know that my Immortal Eclipse Valley is not something they can easily provoke. With such momentum today, the High Ancestor must be enraged. He will surely make a big move. You and I have cultivated for so long, and now we finally have the chance to display our skills. How wonderful! Ha 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 ha! This old lady's saber is already thirsting for blood. Several high-spirited Immortal Eclipse Valley disciples glanced at a short and ugly man who was holding a saber and wildly laughing. Their lips twitched, and they turned their heads far away. Soon, everyone gathered in the grand square. Rumble, rumble. The doors to the Pale Hall opened, and the 8 great elders of Immortal Eclipse Valley rushed out. Their faces were tense and pale. The grand square suddenly fell silent. Countless Eclipse family juniors and cultivators of the valley felt their hearts chill. The lords of the valley were truly enraged. Good, 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 good. Demonic path thieves, your good days have come to an end. As everyone's killing intent rose, the atmosphere in the square suddenly turned somber. Who? It was like a giant hand piercing through the clouds. Immortal Eclipse Valley's Great Array formation felt the rising momentum of the disciples and quietly began to revolve. With a loud rumble, heaven and earth spiritual strength surged. Thunderclaps filled the air, the momentum astonishing to the extreme. The 8 elders frowned as they saw this. The Clear Sky Furnace's first seat coldly shouted, "All of you restrain your aura! Do you want to tear apart our old bones?" Schwa! Everyone was stunned and dumbfounded. The situation didn't seem right. The Sea Forge Furnace's first seat Fan Zhonghai coughed. Senior Apprentice Brother Su, the old ancestor, is still here. How about I announce this instead? Su coldly snorted and lowered his head, no longer speaking. Fan Zhonghai took a deep breath and said, "Pass down the old ancestor's decree." Walala! Everyone knelt down in the grand square. Yesterday the demonic path attacked, but it was actually a blessing in disguise. The old ancestor has been reunited with his lost junior apprentice brother. From today on, he is my Immortal Eclipse Valley's junior uncle, and his seniority is equal to the old ancestor. No disciple may offend him. Otherwise, the valley rules will not tolerate it. Everyone's eyes and jaws fell to the ground. Old ancestor's junior apprentice brother? Junior uncle? Where did he pop out from? Their thoughts raced. They already knew why the 8 elders had such gloomy expressions. As first seats, it had been extremely difficult for them to reach where they were today. Just as they were about to reach the peak, They were only below the old ancestor. Then, some inexplicable junior uncle suddenly jumped out and suppressed them. How could they be willing to accept this? Moreover, they were talking about junior uncle. No one knew just how young he was. If he was a 10 to 20-year-old baby, then that would be a big joke. Thinking of this, the 100 to 200-year-old core cultivators of Immortal Eclipse Valley all had ugly complexions. Everyone left as quickly as they came. After the announcement was made, they were immediately dismissed. The 8 elders all had gloomy expressions as they returned to their respective stations. From start to finish, Qin Yu didn't show himself. This was the result of his strong request, and in addition to the opposition of the 8 elders, Pil Crucible finally agreed. Even so, the name of Junior Uncle spread throughout the entire Immortal Eclipse Valley in just an hour. Chapter 73. Genius in a Second, Remember Love Go. Speaking of the net, to provide you with wonderful novels to read. He had somehow become the junior uncle of Immortal Eclipse Valley, the leading great sect of the Southern Empire and Northern Dynasty. His seniority was so high that it was terrifying. He looked down at his apprentice nephews and grand disciples. This plot was simply too ridiculous, but after sleeping for a night, he opened his eyes, closed them, and opened them again. After repeating this several times, he finally sighed. This really wasn't a dream. Junior granduncle, are you awake? A soft voice sounded out from outside the door. Qin Yu opened the door. 6 Immortal Eclipse Valley female cultivators stood to his left and right with blushing faces. They each held an inner robe, outer robe, boots, accessories, towels, and other items. They lowered their heads and bowed. Disciple greets Junior Granduncle. You are. Disciple has received orders to help Junior Granduncle bathe and change clothes. The female cultivator on the left blushed red. Hot soup has been prepared. Please follow us. Qin Yu was frightened. Just what was this old fellow, Pil Crucible, doing? He waved his hand again and again. No need, no need. I can bathe myself. You may leave. The female cultivator was stumped. This, Qin Yu said, I will explain. You don't need to worry. The female cultivator revealed a happy expression. Thank you, Junior Granduncle. Disciple Kaiwe and Mingxia will serve you from now on. If there is anything you need, please feel free to ask. Qin Yu frowned, not saying anything. He would have to find Pil Crucible to resolve this matter. After setting down the hot soup and clothes, he waved his hand and had them leave. A moment later, he washed up and changed into a new set of clothes. Then he pushed open the door and walked out. Kai Wei, Mingxia, and the other female disciples' eyes brightened. Qin Yu wasn't an extremely handsome person, but after cultivating the demon body, his mortal body had adjusted itself to become more angular. In addition to the existence of the little blue lamp, he had a deep background, and every movement he made was filled with an imposing aura. Of course, this was also closely related to the clothes that Immortal Eclipse Valley had prepared. The black robes were embroidered with silver threads. The craftsmanship and embroidery were second to none. It was absolutely tailored and accentuated Qin Yu's aura. As the saying went, clothes made the man and horses made the saddle. In addition, there was a white jade crown on his head, a roaming dragon pendant at his waist, and rock boots on his feet. Not only were they luxurious and noble, they were also extraordinary treasures. With this set of clothes, even if he stood still, he would be able to block the attacks of 2 or 3 golden core cultivators. The roaming dragon pendant on his waist could even block an attack from a nascent soul cultivator. Where is senior brother? Kai Yu said respectfully, reporting to little Marshal Granduncle. Old ancestor has already been waiting for a long time. Please follow disciple. Stepping out of the rear residence and passing through a long winding corridor, the garden that entered her eyes was incomparably elegant. Clouds and mist lingering around it added to the tranquility. Pil Crucible sat in the seat of honor in the main hall. drinking tea with a light expression. As he heard the sound of footsteps, he faintly smiled. Junior apprentice brother, did you sleep well last night? Qin Yu cupped his hands together. Greetings, senior apprentice brother. I have rested well. In addition, I have to thank senior brother for giving me all these treasures. Without further words, Caillou bowed and withdrew. Pill Crucible immediately lost his composure and slumped backwards. Junior apprentice brother, I see that this girl still has her primordial een. Do you have some hidden trouble that's hard to say? Don't be afraid. Just tell senior brother. This old man will refine a furnace of pills for you. I guarantee that after you take it, you will be full of energy. Nighttime, cough cough, it's not a problem. Looking at the old fellow winking at him, Qin Yu's eyes twitched. He took a deep breath and said, I'm in good health, so there's no need for senior apprentice brother to worry about me. Caillou, Mingxia, and the others are all disciples of the valley. It's better to let them leave and cultivate properly. Pill Crucible bemoaned the state of the universe and pitied the fate of mankind. He had a face that said, Junior apprentice brother, just admit it. I won't laugh at you. But please, why are your eyes so wretched? Seeing Qin Yu's complexion darken, he coughed and said, Good, good, your body is fine. That should be fine. Kai Wei and Mingxia will stay to serve you. Don't worry, they are willing. You don't have to worry about seniority in the future. You and I, as cultivators, should act with a clear conscience. You don't have to worry about trivial matters. Blinking his eyes, he said, As the saying goes, flowers that can be plucked must be plucked in the end. Don't wait until there are no flowers, but only branches. Junior brother, don't waste your good time. Qin Yu accepted his fate. He cupped his hands together and bowed. I will follow senior apprentice brother's teachings. Pill Crucible had a teachable expression on his face. He stood up and walked out. Come, I will bring you to the hidden treasure pavilion. You can choose something from there as a greeting gift from your senior apprentice brother. Qin Yu's eyes lit up. Immortal Eclipse Valley's hidden treasure pavilion was inevitably extraordinary. After leaving the main hall, Pill Crucible flicked his sleeves. He could hear the howling of wind and clouds in his ears. When his vision was restored once more, he found himself in front of a simple wooden building. Although the stairs were in good condition, the wood had been battered by wind and rain, leaving behind countless mottled traces of time. Pill Crucible held his hands behind his back and earnestly said, Qin Yu, even if you are my junior apprentice brother, you can only choose one item. I don't know when you will be able to enter again. So, for the next 2 hours, it is best if you look around before you make your decision. Once you have confirmed your choice, you can mark your divine sense. Go. Qin Yu's heart warmed. This cheap senior apprentice, brother that had come from nowhere, was actually very good to him. Of course, he wouldn't do anything for him just because of this. There were far too many schemes in this world. Even a loving couple could fall out overnight. It was best to be cautious in everything. Qin Yu respectfully bowed and turned to walk towards the wooden building. The wooden stairs creaked, but it didn't fall into his ears at all. Rather, it calmed his mind. He didn't worry that Pill Crucible would have any ill intentions towards him. This was because, with his cultivation, there was no need for him to go through so much trouble. There was no lock on the door. Qin Yu reached out a hand and pushed it. A suction force followed, and his field of vision darkened. When it lit up again, he was already standing in the wooden building. Behind him was the door. It wasn't locked, but in his eyes it represented some inconceivable strength. Without permission, he feared that anyone who touched this door would never appear again. There was no gorgeous scenery within the wooden building, nor was there any frightening array formations. There were several rows of wooden shelves casually placed around them, and they didn't seem to be organized at all. Spiritual strength bubbles wrapped around items, imprisoning them on the wooden shelves. Beside them were jade slips. Qin Yu looked at the first axe-shaped treasure that entered his eyes. He picked up the jade slip and probed it with his divine sense. Indeed, there was some simple information about this treasure inside. Heaven's splitting axe imitation. Although there is a great disparity between it and the real thing, its offensive power is still outstanding. It is suitable for disciples that walk the path of great offense and defense. Note, this treasure has certain requirements in terms of mortal body strength. And what was amazing was that there was also a mark at the back of the information. The dark-faced, large man grasped the heaven's splitting axe and chopped out, severing the river in front of him. Its might was astonishing. This imitation heaven's splitting axe could be considered a top-grade magic tool amongst Golden Core realm magic tools in terms of striking power. As he swept his eyes over the long wooden shelves and the spiritual strength bubbles that covered them, Qin Yu sighed inwardly. Immortal Eclipse Valley was truly rich to the point of overflowing with wealth. He laid down the jade slip and looked further in. The treasures on the wooden shelves should have been arranged according to category. What he saw were offensive magic tools, and several of them were extremely powerful. However, Qin Yu wasn't too tempted. He was strong enough, and as long as he didn't provoke a nascent soul cultivator, he could freely roam the Southern Empire and Northern Dynasty. These treasures could at most be considered icing on the cake. He quickened his pace. On the second wooden shelf, there were layers upon layers of defensive magic tools. Although the quality was good, Pilding had already given him many of them, and none of them were too outstanding. Qin Yu paid attention to a few and temporarily skipped over them. Following that, there was a wide variety of treasures, all of them strange and bizarre. There were all sorts of treasures that one hadn't heard of before, but there were none that didn't exist. This fully demonstrated the deep background of Immortal Eclipse Valley. 8 treasure, horn lamp. Take a wisp of the soul and pour it into it, ignite it and place it on an altar. If one perished, there was a chance that they could use this lamp to condense a remnant soul. For a cultivator, as long as their soul wasn't extinguished, they wouldn't truly die. Seizing the body of another was the best option, and refining a puppet body was also an option. In the worst-case scenario, they could still transform into a ghost cultivator and continue living. No one would complain about having too many life-saving treasures. This treasure could be considered precious. Crimson, Refine 9, Level Pagoda. Each level of the pagoda had a beast soul sealed within it. If an energy refining cultivator filled the first level, they could summon a first-level energy refining beast soul. If they filled the second level, they could summon a second-level energy refining beast soul. The highest 9 levels could summon 9 beast souls to battle. Foundation establishment cultivators were the same. Golden Core cultivators were the same. Energy refining and foundation establishment cultivators were fine, but Golden Core realm beast souls were much fiercer. If one could summon 9 beast souls, they could easily destroy anyone under the nascent soul realm. Flowing light pagoda cover was a secret treasure of the Buddhist sect. When one cultivated, it could calm the mind and prevent distracting thoughts from the outside world, greatly increasing one's cultivation speed. And more importantly, this pagoda cover could be used all year round. Once one reached a state where their thoughts were connected, they could fuse it into their body and be protected from all evil. Crimson Fire Glass Bead, a treasure condensed in the depths of a 1,000-mile volcano. The 1,000 threads were constantly formed, and after refining it with a drop of blood, both parties formed a contract to live and die together. The withered 9 nether lotus could greatly increase the strength of one soul. The treasures in this wooden pagoda were accumulated by Immortal Eclipse Valley over countless years. Each one could be called incomparably precious. For Pill Crucible to allow him to choose any one of them was already extremely generous. But which one should he choose? Qin Yu looked around, falling into a dilemma. Outside the wooden pagoda, Pill Crucible was fuming with anger. But the 16 to 17-year-old girl in front of him didn't seem to care at all. Her indifferent tone didn't change at all. Pill Crucible, even if you are the master of Immortal Eclipse Valley, you still don't have the authority to casually bestow treasures to others. As someone with the highest authority, if you know your mistakes, how can you convince your disciples? Pil Crucible clenched his teeth. I'm right here, so why don't you find me? Who isn't convinced? The young girl glanced at him. Relying on your status and cultivation to suppress the different voices in the valley, that is even more foolish. Pil Crucible disdainfully said, I am foolish. I can do whatever I want. The young girl lightly said, At the next grand meeting in the valley, I will announce this matter to the public. Without evidence, who would believe you? I have already left behind a recording of today's events. Pil Crucible's face stiffened. His expression suddenly changed. Spirity, you see, I only have a single junior apprentice brother. As the dignified master of a valley, if I don't have a decent greeting gift, then that would be far too shameful. Just this once, I guarantee that just this once. Can you make an exception for me? The young girl tilted her head and looked at him. She stretched out 5 fingers. Pil Crucible had a bitter expression. He pinched his nose and said, All right, I will give you the spirit stones later. Shwa! The young girl turned and walked away. After several steps, she scattered into countless motes of light. Pil Crucible revealed a complex look. He shook his head and composed himself, looking at the tightly shut wooden pagoda door. He was also curious as to which item Chinyu would take. At almost the same time, Chinyu stopped. He lowered his head with surprise and bewilderment as he looked at a gray, mushroom-shaped object on the wooden frame. This is Chinyu's eyes widened. He sniffed the scent of the mushroom and then carefully traced the lines of the wooden frame. His eyes slowly brightened. He took out a storage bag. His sleeves flashed, and the medicine codex, Jade, slip appeared. His divine sense quickly entered it, and he soon found the information he needed. Hashtag, I'm late. Sorry. It's only for the next 2 days. Steamed Bun had set a time for the daily update so that everyone wouldn't have to wait too long. Chapter 74. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go. Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. In ancient times, there was a spiritual tree that could give birth to a soul due to fate. When the tree died, its soul would not be extinguished, circulating between the soul marks. Every 100 years, it could give birth to a soul mushroom, which would wither in 7 days. However, if there was a soul mushroom that was over 100 years old, it could become a supreme treasure of heaven and earth. After swallowing it, one could obtain the attribute of the spirit with soul, and from then on, the soul would never dissipate. If it was over 1,000 years old, the soul mushroom would become a treasure of the heavens and earth. Once it was refined into the body, it would become an ancient and famous treasure, the companion's soul. It was rumored that in ancient times, there was a ferocious beast named Qi. It had a ruthless nature and caused hundreds of millions of massacres, causing human powerhouses to take action to suppress it. In this battle, the sun and moon lost their radiance, and heaven and earth collapsed. The strength of the vicious beast was beyond imagination. 72 human warriors fell, and they used their blood essence to activate a secret technique to kill it. The source of its extraordinary power was the partner soul. After this battle, the world was thrown into an uproar, and all types of information related to the partner soul were revealed for the first time. A partner soul could be considered a soul avatar. It was nearly the same as the soul of the main body. It could automatically absorb spiritual energy from the heavens and earth and transform it into a steady stream of energy for the main soul to grow. It was a true soul cultivation accelerator, but its effects weren't limited to just this. The strength of a partner soul could superimpose with the main soul, doubling the cultivation of a cultivator's soul. Moreover, in a life or death situation, the partner soul could destroy the main soul in order to avoid a life or death calamity. For example, the most terrifying soul-bearing tribulation lightning was the nascent soul tribulation. with a companion soul. Even if he couldn't block it, he could still pass through it unscathed. Moreover, this was only the information that was currently known about companion souls. Even now, no one knew how powerful they were. Ever since the emergence of the savage beasts, records of partner souls were rarely seen in ancient books. After the baptism of time, there were very few who knew of this treasure. The Medicine Codex had records regarding the soul mushroom as well as information about the partner soul. Qin Yu had studied it in detail during his time cultivating beneath the radiant redwood, so he knew about it. Soul mark, soul mushroom, and companion soul. If it were someone else, even if he knew about the companion soul, he could only give up with a bitter smile. But Qin Yu was different. He had the little blue lamp that could accelerate the growth of spirit plants. No matter how mysterious the soul mushroom was, it still belonged to the category of spirit plants, and the little blue lamp had never disappointed him. He took out a storage bag and took out a jade hoe. He carefully cut down the soul mushroom from the wooden frame and placed it in a jade bottle that he had prepared earlier. He stuck on a talisman that sealed away the dissipation of his vitality and turned to leave. Although the Medicine Codex stated that the soul mushroom could survive for a day after leaving the tree, he didn't want to take such a risk. However, after taking a few steps, he realized that it was still early before nightfall. No matter how anxious he was, he could only continue waiting. Too much concern leads to chaos, and one's temperament still needs to be tempered. Taking a deep breath, Qin Yu took the jade bottle and walked to the exit of the wooden building. He reached out a hand and pushed it open. Then he was outside the building. Pill Crucible's eyes brightened. He smiled and said, "Junior apprentice brother, let me see just what treasure you took. Let me tell you in advance, you must think about it carefully. If you rush to choose the items in front, I'm afraid you'll be distressed for a while." The old man winked, but as soon as he looked at it, a strange expression appeared on his face. What is this? Why haven't I seen it before?" Qin Yu cupped his hands across his chest. "Senior apprentice brother, I obtained this from the last wooden shelf. If I'm not mistaken, it should be the legendary soul mushroom." As he spoke, he glanced over. Pill Crucible's mouth fell open. He mumbled, "Yes, yes." Calculating the time, the soul mushroom should have been born during this period of time. He suddenly slapped his forehead. "What are you doing with it?" "It's useless." Qin Yu smiled. "The soul mushroom is incomparably mystical, and I only inadvertently learned about it. Since I saw it today, there's no reason for me to miss it. Since senior apprentice, brother, wants me to choose a treasure from the wooden building, then choosing the soul mushroom shouldn't be a violation of the rules. I hope that senior apprentice brother can agree." Pill Crucible waved his hands again and again. "How can that be? I want to give you a formidable treasure, not something so useless. Hurry up and go back and choose something else." The figure of a young girl suddenly appeared. She lightly said, "Pill Crucible, don't push your luck." Qin Yu's eyebrows arched up. In Immortal Eclipse Valley, there was actually someone who dared to speak to his cheap senior apprentice brother like this. Pill Crucible coughed. "Spirity, you also saw that stupid boy Qin Yu took a useless soul mushroom. Let him go back in and choose again. An hour, no, a quarter hour is fine. I guarantee that I won't bother you again in the future." The young girl shook her head. "No." Pill Crucible clenched his teeth. "Add 30% more spirit stones." "No." 50%. "No." "Double." Pill Crucible's face twitched. "Spirity, I only have a single junior apprentice brother. If others were to find out that I took the soul mushroom as a greeting gift, I wouldn't be able to bear the shame." The young girl had an indifferent expression. "Even if it was 10 times, I still wouldn't agree. Allowing him to enter the wooden building is already a violation of the valley's rules. It is impossible to do it a second time." She paused for a moment and then swept her eyes over. "Moreover, in a sense, the soul mushroom is more precious than all the treasures in the wooden building. For him to choose such a treasure, it can only be said that his vision is unique. Pil Crucible's old face fell, and his expression became extremely long. Qin Yu was filled with curiosity. Although he hadn't known this cheap senior apprentice brother for long, he knew that he was someone who cared about face and was normally dignified in front of others. But in front of this young girl, he didn't pretend at all and seemed very relaxed. His thoughts raced. He cupped his hands together and said, "Senior apprentice brother, what this young girl said is correct. The soul mushroom is my choice, and I am satisfied with it." It was only at this time that the young girl truly looked at Qin Yu, but her indifferent eyes seemed to sweep over a stone or a tree. Pil Crucible wanted to say something more, but the young girl suddenly said, "It is impossible for him to enter the wooden building again. But if you want to compensate him, there is an ownerless treasure outside the wooden building. If he can refine it, his benefits will be endless." Pil Crucible's complexion turned ugly. "The 8th furnace? That's right." The young girl took out a round token. "If you agree, then take this token. I can make an exception and give him a chance to refine the 8th furnace." Qin Yu said, "Senior apprentice brother, there is no need to say anything more." Pil Crucible sighed. "Just don't regret it in the future." He took the token and wrapped up Qin Yu with his sleeves. The two of them vanished from sight. The young girl watched as the two left. After a long time, she frowned. "The soul mushroom, Schwa," she scattered into motes of light. "Junior apprentice brother, what do you want me to say?" Pil Crucible's face was filled with helplessness. "You actually wasted such a good chance." Qin Yu smiled. "To be able to see the soul mushroom and obtain it is already an extremely rare event. So how could it be considered a waste? Senior apprentice brother, there is no need to take it to heart." Pil Crucible coldly coughed. "What does it matter if I take it to heart or not? Since things have come to this, there is nothing else I can do. Whatever, come with me." He muttered, "Although the chance is pitifully small, I've already given you the token. For better or for worse, I might as well give it a try." Schwa! The two figures appeared in a pavilion. Fire energy floated in the air, and a light medicinal fragrance lingered around. Qin Yu wasn't unfamiliar with this scene. It was caused by alchemy. The guard, cultivator, hurriedly bowed. "Greetings, old ancestor." His eyes fell on Qin Yu. After a moment of hesitation, he said, "Greetings, junior granduncle." Pil Crucible had an indifferent expression. His eyes were filled with the demeanor of a great expert. Eclipse Yen hurried over. He bowed towards the two. No matter what he was thinking, he didn't reveal anything on his face. "Old ancestor and junior uncle, what instructions do you have for me?" Pil Crucible cursed inwardly. He had been so depressed just now that he had forgotten about Eclipse Yen. His thoughts raced, and he placed the token in Qin Yu's hand. "I suddenly remembered that there are some matters I need to deal with. Let Eclipse Yen lead you to what you need to do. I will be leaving first." Schwa! As soon as he said he left, he vanished from sight. Qin Yu looked at the token in his hand. As he felt Eclipse Yan's gloomy eyes, he understood why his cheap senior apprentice brother had run away faster than a rabbit. He shook his head and said, "Forget it. I never had any intention of refining the 8th furnace to begin with. Have someone send me away." Eclipse Yen straightened his body, his expression indifferent. "Junior uncle, you speak too seriously. The old ancestor must have placed great hopes on you. The master of the 8th furnace has been vacant for many years, so how could I dare to obstruct you? Junior uncle, please follow me." He turned and sneered. What sort of character was the old ancestor? How could he not understand the gravity of the situation? This lowly person must have used his status to forcefully request this. So the old ancestor had no choice but to agree. The old ancestor, finding an excuse to leave just now, was the best proof of this. But now he was still trying to play this sanctimonious game of cat and mouse. This was simply laughable. No one knew that Eclipse Yen, who hadn't made any progress this entire time, had finally made a breakthrough after nearly 100 years of hard work. Perhaps because he had sincerely moved the heavens above, he had finally made a breakthrough. The eighth furnace had nearly been refined to this point. He had hidden this news so that he could amaze the world with a single feat. Once he finished refining it, he would announce it to the public. But since Qin Yu wanted to refine the eighth furnace, then he would give him this chance. With the eighth furnace's strength, if he refined it after it had initially recognized him as its master, there would be a 100% chance of a backlash. By the time he reached the Foundation establishment realm, he would have at least 7 or 8 layers of skin peeled off. Eclipse Yen had long since grown impatient with this so-called junior uncle. Moreover, Qin Yu had dared to try and seize the eighth furnace and destroy the foundation he had established in Immortal Eclipse Valley. How could he let go of a chance to humiliate him? He hurried along. As for the news that junior granduncle had arrived and wanted to seize the eighth furnace, it was quickly spread through the eighth furnace station through the mouths of several guard disciples. Moreover, it spread at an even faster speed. Countless eyes fell on Qin Yu's body, filled with ridicule and contempt. What sort of treasure was the eighth furnace? Even with his late golden core cultivation, his teacher, or great-uncle, hadn't been able to refine it in 100 years. Moreover, in these 100 years, over a dozen stunning geniuses had attempted to refine it, but all of them had ended in failure. For a mere foundation establishment cultivator to have such ambitions, it was simply laughable. There were even some eighth furnace direct disciples that knew of Eclipse Yan's initial attempt to refine the eighth furnace. They didn't bother to conceal the sneer on their faces, waiting for this junior granduncle to make a fool of himself. Eclipse Yen stopped. He coldly said, "Junior uncle, we've arrived." In front of them was a 10,000-foot mountain. The mountain was crimson and barren, and it emitted a steaming heat. Waves of heat constantly surged in the air. Without even approaching, one could tell just how terrifyingly high the temperature was. At the base of the mountain, there was a 10-foot circular stone door. The temperature here was even more astonishing. The air was so hot that it distorted one's vision. The eighth furnace is called the Nine Earths. It is located deep underground in magma. After Junior Uncle pushes open the door, you will naturally be able to see it. Eclipse Yan's lips curved up. We will wait here for Junior Uncle to return. Qin Yu was well aware of the hostility that Eclipse Yan and the eighth furnace disciples held towards him. He felt helpless in his heart. Ever since he became Immortal Eclipse Valley's junior uncle, things seemed to have spiraled out of his control. He looked at the crimson 1,000-foot mountain and then stepped forwards. For many years, Immortal Eclipse Valley hadn't been able to find a new master of the eighth furnace. He was well aware of his own limits. Disregarding the little blue lamp, his alchemy skills could only barely be considered passable. So how could he subdue such a great treasure? He would just treat it as a formality. Chapter 75. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. He stood firm and pushed open the stone door. Waves of heat surged outwards. Qin Yu narrowed his eyes. Under the mocking gazes of many people, he stepped into the crimson mountain. The temperature inside the mountain was even more terrifying. Under the scorching heat, the stone walls glowed red. Without the protection of transcendence energy, one would be cooked in a short while. The slanted tunnel extended into the ground, but it didn't take long for it to reach the end. At the end was a cave that was hundreds of feet wide, and there was a round well on the ground. The well was unfathomably deep, and a scarlet light flickered in and out of it. Even though he was several meters away, he could still feel the terrifying heat contained within. Obviously, this was a test. If he didn't have the courage to jump, then he naturally wouldn't be able to refine the eighth furnace. Qin Yu hesitated for a moment and then turned to leave. It wasn't that he was afraid of this deep well, but that he didn't want to waste time. The soul mushroom was still in the storage pouch, and most of his thoughts were on it. Little martial uncle, why are you leaving? Jump down, and you will see the 8th furnace. If you come out now, I fear that the disciples will laugh at you. Eclipse Yan's light voice echoed in the stone chamber. Qin Yu's footsteps paused. His eyes turned cold. Whether I stay or leave, I have my own plans. Eclipse Yan coldly sneered. Junior apprentice uncle status is exalted, so I don't dare to stop him. But this matter was personally ordered by the old ancestor. Zhao Yan will definitely obey and won't dare to disobey in the slightest. So, martial uncle, please make a trip. Qin Yu was silent for several breaths of time. Then he faintly smiled. That's fine. Then let's give it a try. He turned around, walked to the well, and jumped in. Outside the 1,000-foot peak, Zhao Yan's face sank as he sneered. He didn't even have this bit of shrewdness and couldn't stand being provoked at all. He actually dared to have ideas about the 8th furnace. He simply didn't know how to live or die. The juniors of the Eclipse clan said in a low voice, Great uncle, his position is revered, and he is also the old ancestor's junior brother. If something goes wrong, I'm afraid it will be hard to explain. Eclipse Yan waved his hand. It's fine. Since the old ancestor left him here, it meant that he had the intention to punish him. But it was not convenient for him to say it out loud. Let him suffer a bit, and then I will rescue him. This time, I will make sure that he loses all face so that he won't dare to take a single step into my 8th furnace station ever again. The Eclipse clan juniors began to flatter. Great uncle is wise. Who? Waves of heat rushed towards him. Qin Yu narrowed his eyes, far calmer than when he was outside. The demon body was powerful. Not only was it indestructible, but it also had a strong resistance to extreme environments. Although the temperature here was high, it was only a bit warmer to Qin Yu. He revolved his magic power a bit, and there wasn't a single trace of sweat on his forehead. Bang! As his feet landed on the ground, Qin Yu swept his eyes around, taking in his surroundings. At this moment, he was standing on a large black stone in the magma. This stone had obviously been refined with magic power and was supported by a formation. It sat in the magma lake and remained motionless, no matter how turbulent the torrents were. Besides this great stone, there was nothing in sight. The 8th furnace that had been sealed beneath the 9th earth had disappeared without a trace. Qin Yu frowned. He swept his eyes around and soon discovered something strange in the lake of magma. The magma was always in a flowing state, but a few thousand feet away there was a strange calm. Moreover, the magma there was clearly much dimmer than its surroundings, as if a massive amount of heat had been sucked away. Suddenly, it seemed as if some titanic being had awoken beneath the magma lake. Its body stirred up terrifying waves, causing the roiling magma to roar as if it wanted to swallow the great stone. Bang! The giant furnace broke through the magma, billowing flames wrapping around it. It released a blinding divine light, making it impossible to see its true appearance. But without a doubt, this was the 8th furnace. The changes in the magma lake had been triggered by it. Qin Yu instantly understood that the 8th furnace was the same as the black sword in his hand. Both of them had developed their own spiritual sense, and after sensing his arrival, they took the initiative to attack him. No wonder Eclipse Yan's complexion had been so ugly when he learned he had come to refine the 8th furnace. Who would be willing to give up such a precious treasure? Even if it was just a single glance, he might still be unwilling. Magma surged up. The black stone overflowed, nearly touching Qin Yu's body. The already terrifying temperature began to rise at an alarming rate. Qin Yu dripped with sweat, drenching his robes, but his expression remained calm. The 8th furnace seemed to discover that it couldn't scare him at all. It gradually restrained its strength and quietly floated in the air. That posture, no matter how one looked at it, seemed to be saying, "Come on, come on, come on." Qin Yu's complexion was strange. If a pill furnace could actually express such a feeling, then the boundless universe was truly full of wonders. Sadly, he had no way of taming it, Or else, with this cauldron in his hand, his alchemy path would be like adding wings to a tiger. As if sensing Qin Yu's thoughts, the storage bag suddenly emitted an indignant cry. Without his permission, the fleeting flame furnace flew out on its own. Whoosh, straight towards the 8th furnace. Qin Yu was shocked, but what happened next caused his eyes to widen. It was with great difficulty that his jaw nearly fell to the ground. The moment the incomparably massive and arrogant 8th furnace saw the fleeting flame furnace, its body violently trembled as if it were suffering from epilepsy. Then it threw itself against the fleeting flame furnace. Love, go, small, say, neck kabang. A mass of flames blasted the 8th furnace away, but in the blink of an eye it flew back. Bang, bang, the fleeting flame furnace attacked again and again, but the 8th furnace seemed to be addicted. Not only did it not counterattack in anger, but it hummed with excitement. No matter how one listened to it, it sounded like a rutting ram, unable to conceal the restlessness in its heart. Qin Yu blinked his eyes. He suddenly felt that this world was far too unfathomable. Alchemy furnaces were actually divided into male and female. Otherwise, what would the 8th furnace be doing? Was it like attracting like? Qin Yu shuddered. He felt that his outlook on life was too dark, too dirty. Finally, the fleeting flame furnace turned around arrogantly, looking down at Qin Yu from above. It had an expression that said, "Open your eyes and see who is the fiercest here." The 8th furnace had shrunk to half the size of the fleeting flame furnace. It bowed and bowed in all sorts of flattering ways. Occasionally it would turn to Qin Yu and spit out flames, causing the magma lake to tumble about, as if saying that if you dare to provoke my goddess, you brat will die. But who would have thought that the fleeting flame furnace wouldn't appreciate it at all? It slapped it away, but in the blink of an eye the 8th furnace flew back, its face filled with satisfaction as if it were immersed in happiness. Qin Yu's eyes brightened and a faint smile appeared on his lips. The 8th furnace that was filled with love suddenly shivered, feeling as if something wasn't right. Outside the 10,000-foot mountain, Eclipse Yan's complexion paled. He could feel the abnormality in the 8th furnace, and he had never seen such intense mood fluctuations before. Damn! Just what methods did Qin Yu have that he could stir up the 8th furnace? Luckily, he had already completed the initial refinement. Otherwise, he really might have been able to smoothly refine the 8th furnace. Although he felt a little more at ease, Eclipse Yan's complexion became increasingly ugly. He felt as if his 100 years of hard work couldn't compare to someone else's in a single day. Towards Qin Yu, he increasingly disliked him. Humph! Refine it, refine it. Once you begin, you will discover that the 8th furnace has already chosen a master. Its strength will be something to be enjoyed. Suddenly, the 10,000-foot mountain began to gently tremble. The ground shook along with it. Eclipse Yan's complexion changed. His eyes widened, filled with disbelief. He roared out in his heart, "What a good Qin Yu! You actually refined it. Moreover, you clearly aroused the approval of the 8th furnace, thus causing such a phenomenon. Damn it! Just where did your luck come from? You managed to obtain the approval of the 8th furnace the first time." The Eclipse Clan juniors stuttered, "Great uncle, what is going on?" Eclipse Yan paled. "Don't worry, he can't overturn the heavens." The 10,000-foot mountain began to shake more and more intensely. The red mountain rock began to rise in temperature, gradually releasing a red light. The Eclipse Clan juniors gulped. "Great uncle, the 10,000-foot mountain is shining." Eclipse Yan clenched his jaws. "He can't overturn the heavens." Atop the 10,000-foot mountain, massive runes appeared. They didn't attach to the mountain, but directly fused into the mountain rock, becoming one with the entire 10,000-foot mountain. The Eclipse Clan juniors were stunned. "Great uncle, the mountain stabilizing runes have appeared." Eclipse Yan roared, "He can't overturn the heavens." Puff! He spat out a mouthful of blood. As it fell to the ground, it was evaporated into nothingness by the high temperatures. Eclipse Yen was like he had been struck by lightning. His face paled and his eyes turned blood red. He was like a vicious beast that was about to devour its prey. His connection with the eighth furnace had been severed. It hadn't been destroyed, but had been cut off by the eighth furnace on its own initiative. Impossible. This was absolutely impossible. It was Chinyu. It had to be Chinyu. He must have used some sinister method to deceive the eighth furnace and tempt it to dissolve their relationship. Otherwise, the eighth furnace had already acknowledged him and completed the initial refinement. So how could it possibly betray him? In the history of immortal Eclipse Valley, this sort of matter had never occurred before. It was Chinyu. Eclipse Yin gasped for breath. His aura crazily erupted. He was impressively an 8th-level Golden Core Master. The terrifying pressure caused the surrounding disciples to draw back in panic. Bang! The ground shook and shattered. Eclipse Yin rushed out. He wanted to enter the 10,000-foot mountain and expose Chinyu's true identity. He wanted to tell the eighth furnace just who its true master was. With a loud explosion, Eclipse Yin was sent flying backwards. A powerful collision of strength tore apart his hair and ripped apart his robes. Blood flowed from his head, leaving him in a distressed state. He was stunned like a wooden chicken. The grief and indignation in his heart were like 100,000 volcanoes, one that not even the waters of the mountains and rivers could extinguish. His eighth furnace, the eighth furnace that he had guarded for 100 years, the eighth furnace that he was just about to successfully refine, had actually abandoned him. Whoosh, whoosh. With the sound of breaking air, several figures held forwards. The third furnace Master Eclipse Xan, the fourth furnace Master Eclipse Yu, the fifth furnace Master Eclipse Shuji, the sixth furnace Master Eclipse Wu, and the seventh furnace Master Eclipse Ming. In immortal Eclipse Valley, the Eclipse clan's 5 furnace masters had gathered together. As they looked at the dazed and bleeding Eclipse Yen, their faces were filled with shock. They were all furnace masters, so how could they not know what this represented? Eclipse Yan's 100 years of hard work had been destroyed today. Eclipse Shuji saw her big brother's miserable appearance. She screamed out, "Big brother, what happened? Why did the eighth furnace sever its relationship with you?" Eclipse Yen whispered, "Chinyu, it was Chinyu." His eyes rapidly turned red, filled with hatred and brutality. He used an evil technique to deceive the eighth furnace. Eclipse Shuji clenched her teeth. "Big brother, rest assured that I will seek justice for you." Eclipse Xan frowned. He said in a low voice, "This matter hasn't been clearly investigated, and it also involves Junior Uncle. Be careful what you say." Eclipse Yen roared out, "I have already started refining the eighth furnace. In another month or so I will be able to completely refine it. Now, the eighth furnace has severed its relationship with me. Eclipse Xan, tell me if Chinyu didn't use an evil technique. Then what was it?" The complexions of the 5 furnace masters changed. The initial refinement represented that the eighth furnace had approved of Eclipse Yen. For a top-level treasure like the 9 great furnaces, this sort of approval would never be changed unless the master died. Could Chinyu have really used an evil technique? Hashtag, 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 hashtag this is the last half day of double time. Brothers, please reward me with monthly tickets. Chapter 76. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go. Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Immortal Eclipse Valley's 8 great furnaces were the treasures of the Eclipse clan's ancestors. Up until now, the first and second strongest furnaces had long since fallen into the hands of outsiders. If the Eclipse clan juniors were inferior, then there was nothing they could say. But if someone were to use evil techniques or schemes to steal their furnace treasures, then they absolutely would not be tolerated by the Eclipse clan disciples. Zhao Yen, we will investigate this matter thoroughly and give you an explanation. The disciples of the Zhao clan will follow the teachings of our ancestors. But if someone tries to scheme against us, don't blame us for being ruthless. I must get to the bottom of this matter regarding the 8th furnace. Eclipse Shuzi's face was ice cold. Elder brother, please calm your anger for now. Little sister and several other brothers are here. We won't let you fall into the trap of this despicable person. So what if he was a respected senior? I won't let this matter rest, even if it reaches the old ancestor. Eclipse Xian's expression darkened. Just as he was about to say something, the 10,000-foot mountain suddenly quieted down and the burning aura rapidly dissipated. At the base of the mountain, a stone door quietly opened and Qin Yu stepped out. Eclipse Yen roared, "Give me back my 8th furnace!" Bang! His golden core level 8 cultivation erupted, and it was as if Mount Tai was pressing down on him. Hum! A dazzling light erupted and countless runes appeared. Zhao Yen was sent flying as if he had collided with a mountain. Blood spurted out from his mouth and nose. With a series of crackling sounds, the bones in his chest and abdomen were broken into several pieces. Eclipse Shuzi cried out in alarm, "Big brother!" She flicked her sleeves and gathered her magic power to catch Eclipse Yen. As she looked at his pitiful appearance, she trembled with anger. "Qin Yu, you dare to do such a thing to my big brother? I will kill you." Zhao Xian stopped her. "Calm down, check it out first." Eclipse Shuzi screamed, "My big brother is heavily injured. How can I remain calm?" Zhao Xian, move aside. Zhao Yu, Zhao Wu, and Zhao Ming also had unfriendly expressions on their faces. Qin Yu's thoughts raced, and he roughly guessed what was going on. His eyes turned icy cold. "Are you saying that if Zhao Yan attacks me, I can't even fight back and can only helplessly wait for death?" The faces of Zhao Yu and the other two froze. Eclipse Shuzi had a venomous look in her eyes. "My brother was so angry that he lost all reason for a moment. You could have just pushed him away, but there was no need to do such a cruel thing. Qin Yu, don't try to deny it." Qin Yu was expressionless. "I didn't activate any spells. It was the 8th furnace that automatically protected its master. For Eclipse Yen to be wounded like this is the backlash force. Do you want to blame me for being too heavy-handed?" Eclipse Shuzi coldly sneered. "You have just refined the 8th furnace, and yet you are able to understand and protect your master? We are all masters of the great furnace. How could we believe your lies?" Qin Yu lifted a hand. Flames appeared in his palm, condensing into the phantom of a palm-sized furnace that emitted an aura that left one's heart racing. Eclipse Xian's complexion changed. The 8 great furnaces were like birds of a feather. He could confirm that this was the manifestation of the 8th furnace's spirit. As the master of the 3rd furnace, who had controlled it for over 100 years, he could only barely accomplish this. He was far from being as relaxed as Qin Yu. The appearance of the 8th furnace's spirit proved that Qin Yu's words were true. But at this time, Eclipse Shuzi's eyes became increasingly cold and sharp. To refine the 8th furnace in less than 2 hours is already astonishing enough. Now, even the furnace spirit is so gentle and respectful towards you. Qin Yu, if you didn't use some strange evil method, how could you have accomplished this? Qin Yu glanced at her and said indifferently, "How I do it is my problem. Now get out of my way." Eclipse Shuzi clenched her teeth. "Leave behind the 8th furnace. Otherwise you can forget taking half a step out today." Qin Yu's eyes turned cold. "If I remember correctly, I am the master of the 8th furnace, and this is the station of the 8th furnace. You dare to threaten me?" Eclipse Shuzi sneered. She pointed a finger into the skies. Bang! In the distance at the station of the 5th furnace, blazing flames shot into the skies, condensing into a fire snake that tore through the skies and circled around the 8th furnace. It roared, and its eyes were cold and gloomy. "We are all furnace masters. The power of the great furnace is not unique to you." Eclipse Shuzi turned and screamed. "My Eclipse Clan juniors are being bullied, and you still want to stand idly by?" Eclipse Yu, Eclipse Wu, and Eclipse Ming glanced at each other and stepped forwards. Bang, bang, bang. Flames shot into the skies from the fourth, sixth, and seventh furnaces, forming into the shapes of wolves, leopards, and tigers that reared their heads back and roared. The power of the four great furnaces erupted, and the temperature between the heavens and earth rapidly rose. Countless cultivators in Immortal Eclipse Valley widened their eyes, shock on their faces. Qin Yu narrowed his eyes. Without waiting for them to speak, the spirit of the eighth furnace in his palm seemed to be provoked. It emitted a loud cry, like the roar of a vicious beast. The skies above the eighth furnace station instantly turned into a sea of fire. Waves of fire billowed outwards, and a giant fire alligator revealed its fangs as it roared. It was 1 against 4, and he had the home advantage. His momentum was ferocious, and he wasn't at a disadvantage at all. Stop! Amidst the angry roars, 3 figures arrived at lightning speed. Su Ke's face darkened. What are you doing? Are you going to betray your master and destroy your ancestors? He took a deep breath and bowed. Greetings, Junior Marshal Uncle. Love, go small, say Netku. Fan Zhonghai sighed softly as helplessness flashed in his eyes. Taoist Wang slapped his forehead. Sueo, are you here to mediate or add oil to the fire? Zhao Shuzi and the others had ugly expressions on their faces. Eclipse Yu's eyes were cold. Senior apprentice brother Su didn't ask for the reason. Yet you want to reprimand us? Taoist Wang hurriedly said. Old Su cares about seniority the most. Zhao Yu, your words are meaningless. In the end, Qin Yu is this old man's junior apprentice brother. If things get out of hand, do you think you'll be any better off? His status was different, and he had a different relationship with Immortal Eclipse Valley, so he always spoke casually. Eclipse Yu's complexion changed. He coldly snorted and didn't speak further. Zhao Shuzi bitterly glared at him. Just as she was about to say something, she was interrupted by Taoist Wang. Zhao Shuzi, just how old are you? Why are you still so hot-tempered? How come you haven't made any progress at all? Eclipse Xian, just stand there in a daze. There are many cultivators from all over living in the valley right now. You're just making a joke of yourself. Eclipse Xian frowned. He cupped his hands across his chest. Senior apprentice brother Su, senior apprentice brother Fan, you came just in time. Then he explained the general situation. Su Ao and Fan Zhonghai were startled. They glanced at Qin Yu, their expressions dignified. If this matter was really as Zhao Shuzi said, then it would be troublesome. Humph. Senior apprentice brother Su respects senior apprentice brothers and respects the rules. Then, I'll have to trouble senior apprentice brother to investigate this matter and return justice to my brother. Zhao Shuzi sneered. Su Ao frowned. Then he composed himself. Junior apprentice sister, don't worry. The matter of the furnace, recognizing a master, is no trifling matter. I will investigate it myself. He turned and respectfully bowed. Junior Marshal Uncle, this matter concerns Eclipse Yan's entire life and even his future destiny. I ask that you give me an explanation. His words were sincere, neither servile nor overbearing. The Eclipse Clan Junior's complexions brightened a little. Qin Yu said, Today, I originally had no intention of refining the eighth furnace, and I also wanted to withdraw midway. But Eclipse Yan refused and used Senior Apprentice Brother's orders as an excuse to prevent me from withdrawing midway. Thinking about it, he thinks that the magma lake is infinitely powerful, so he wants me to suffer a bit. Eclipse Yan's hateful face stiffened. As everyone saw this, they all sighed inwardly. This Eclipse Yan, he had brought this upon himself. Didn't you all want to know how I subdued the eighth furnace? In truth, I also think it's wonderful. Take a look for yourselves. Qin Yu flicked his sleeves, and the fleeting furnace howled out, flames lingering in the wind. In the sea of flames in the skies, the fire alligator swept its tail. Ignoring the 4 fire spirits, it rushed towards the fleeting flame furnace. Bang! With a dull thumping sound, under countless stunned gazes, the fire alligator was sent flying away. But this fellow that had always been arrogant and cruel was actually in a good mood. Not only did it not become angry, but it even turned its head and wagged its tail as it approached. This appearance caused everyone to think of a single word. It was in heat. The Eclipse clan powerhouses were left dumbfounded. Even Su Ao and Eclipse Xan, who had always been known for their restraint, looked as if they had seen a ghost. As for Taoist Wang, who was known as an experienced and knowledgeable old man, he didn't seem to notice anything at all. This was seduction. The 8 great furnaces were the inheritances of the Eclipse clan's ancestors. The Eclipse clan juniors that had always held the 8 great furnaces in incomparable reverence suddenly felt their hearts collapse. How could the supreme treasures passed down by their ancestors be like this? Qin Yu waved his hand and took back the fleeting flame furnace. The fire alligator was enraged. It opened its mouth and roared, its appearance fierce and fierce. No one doubted that this fellow had really been betrayed because of a woman. No, a female furnace. It simply didn't respect Qin Yu at all. Qin Yu lightly said, "If you roar at me again, don't ever think of seeing it again." The fire alligator was convinced. It immediately lowered its head and wagged its tail in a cute manner. Eclipse Yen stared at the scene. As he thought of his 100 years of painstaking refinement and incomparable respect he felt in his heart. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. Eclipse Shuzi rushed over. "Big brother." Qin Yu had a light expression. "This is the reason. If you didn't see it clearly, I can repeat it again." Eclipse Yu's lips twitched. His complexion was as if he had eaten a fly. He waved his hands again and again. This sort of thing that subverted their hearts once was enough. Su Ming took a deep breath. He cupped his hands across his chest. "Thank you, High Master." He turned and said, "Junior apprentice brothers and sisters, do you have any objections?" Taoist Wang muttered, "The matter is placed in front of us, so what nonsense is there to say?" Eclipse Xen ruthlessly glared at him. "Senior apprentice brother Su, we are already clear." He hesitated for a moment and then cupped his hands across his chest. "Junior uncle, if I have offended you today, I ask that you forgive me." Eclipse Shuzi coldly snorted. She picked up the unconscious Eclipse Yen and soared into the skies. Eclipse Yu, Eclipse Wu, and Eclipse Ming followed close behind. Taoist Wang let out a long breath. "It's finally been resolved." He looked at Qin Yu and said with dissatisfaction, "This was clearly something that could have been easily resolved. So why did you have to be so ostentatious? It's better for the young to be a bit more low-key. Nothing good comes from being in the limelight." Qin Yu cupped his hands across his chest. "I thank Senior Wang for the advice." Taoist Wang dodged. "Don't mind me. You are that old freak pill, Crucible's junior apprentice brother. If I were to accept your bow, then I would have been chased down by him. Humph, humph. On the surface he looks dignified, but on the inside he's despicable and wretched. Do you think I don't know him? If you are willing, then you can call me Old Brother Wang from now on. We can talk about this alone." Eclipse Xan angrily shouted out, "Don't speak nonsense. The old ancestor's status isn't something you can slander." He glanced at Su Ao and Fan Zhanghai. The 3 of them exchanged glances, all of them able to see the helplessness in each other's hearts. The conflicts between the Eclipse clan and outsiders had been suppressed by the old ancestor. In addition to them being careful in handling matters, they had calmed down a great deal in recent years. But today, Qin Yu had taken away the 8th furnace. This peace was bound to be shattered. It was likely that a storm was about to descend upon immortal Eclipse Valley. Su Ao cupped his hands across his chest. "Junior uncle, we bid our farewells." Qin Yu said, "I'll have to trouble you with today's matters." Su Ao stood up. He lightly said, "In all fairness, I don't like junior uncle at all. So, I hope that in the future you can resolve the matters you stirred up and not drag us down with you." Whoosh, he shot into the skies. Fan Zhenghai awkwardly smiled and followed close behind. Soon, the two of them flew out of the 8th furnace station. Fan Zhenghai frowned. Senior apprentice brother Su, you have publicly expressed your dissatisfaction with junior uncle. Could it be that you believe that he deliberately led us to interfere in today's matters? Su Ao lightly said, I'm not sure. But junior uncle's actions today have already affected the tranquility of the valley. The only reason I spread out these words is because I hope that this storm will be reduced as much as possible. Fan Zhenghai thought for a moment and smiled. Senior apprentice brother Su is thoughtful. Chapter 77. Genius in a second, remember love, go away. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. After tearing apart all pretense of cordiality with the juniors of the Eclipse clan and failing to obtain the approval of Su Ao and Fan Zhenghai, it could be imagined that after today, Qin Yu's days wouldn't be any better. But he remained calm, not revealing the least bit of anxiety or worry. Nor did he reveal the calmness of a lake. Whether it was confidence or shrewdness, in Taoist Wang's eyes, Qin Yu was much more pleasing to the eye. After a long time he sighed and said, No wonder you didn't want to take me as your master. It turns out you have an even greater background. Although I am extremely confident in my alchemy skills, I still have to admit that old freak Pill Crucible's master is far superior to mine. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. This junior inadvertently obtained the inheritance and didn't receive any guidance from my master. In terms of true alchemy, Senior Wang is more than enough to teach me. Taoist Wang's eyes brightened. His complexion darkened for a long time before he suddenly clapped his hands. I certainly cannot compare to old freak Pill Crucible's master. But that old fellow Pill Crucible, besides his cultivation, I don't fear him at all. Then he whispered, It wasn't easy for me to find a suitable one, but someone intercepted me ahead of time. If I don't do something about it, it will simply ruin my resounding reputation. Qin Yu frowned. Senior Wang. Taoist Wang coughed. He flipped his palm and his fingertips moved. A jade slip quietly fell to the ground. Then his complexion changed. He cried out in alarm. Where did the jade slip that recorded my life's alchemy experiences disappear? That was something I specially prepared for my future disciples. With this jade slip in hand, it is the same as obtaining my wholehearted guidance. Such a precious treasure cannot be left behind. Farewell, farewell. I am going to look for the jade slip. Whoosh, Taoist Wang flew away. Qin Yu was left dumbfounded. This was also possible. He rubbed his stiff face. Then he picked up the jade slip and probed it with his divine sense. After a long time, he took back his divine sense. Qin Yu let out a long breath of relief, a look of gratitude on his face. The jade slip was recorded in great detail. It was truly the accumulation of his entire life. If he could thoroughly understand everything in the jade slip, it would be enough to allow his alchemy skills to be reborn. In the current cultivation world, sectarian bias was extremely important. If one wasn't a disciple of their sect, they could forget learning even the tiniest bit. Taoist Wang clearly knew that it was impossible for him to take him as a disciple, yet he still taught him everything he knew. Just how heavy was this favor? After putting away the jade slip, Qin Yu tidied up his clothes and bowed in the direction he left in. As night fell, a foot of sea blue light blossomed from the storage bag, enveloping the soul mushroom. And indeed, it didn't disappoint Qin Yu. After absorbing the power of the blue sea, the soul mushroom's withered state was swept away and it became full of vitality. Qin Yu smiled. He took out a new storage bag and placed the soul mushroom as well as the radiant redwood's derived root. Although it couldn't be planted into the earth for the time being, the little blue lamp could guarantee that it would be filled with vitality. In the future, once it left Immortal Eclipse Valley, it wouldn't be too late to raise it then. Pill Crucible had treated him extremely well, but the secret of the little blue lamp couldn't be known by others. After refining the 8th furnace and obtaining the approval of the furnace spirit, even if Eclipse Yen was still the 8th old Zhang in name, Qin Yu had already become the true controller of the 8th furnace station. Most of the Eclipse clan disciples had already dispersed with Eclipse Yen. As for the remaining disciples that didn't share the same surname, they were all at a loss. Qin Yu simply sent them away and entered the 10,000-foot peak once more. He entered the magma lake and obtained the approval of the 8th furnace. The terrifyingly high temperatures no longer affected him in the least. He took out the jade slip that Taoist Wang had thrown away and probed it with his divine sense. Immediately he felt as if he had entered the endless sea of stars, his entire mind immersed within. Only when there were no trivial matters to bother him could he truly settle down and study. After an entire 10 days, Qin Yu opened his eyes. His complexion was ashen and his pupils were extremely dim, as if he had consumed too much of his mind. But deep within his eyes, there was a faint light that floated about, becoming increasingly clear. Senior Wang is truly worthy of being called an alchemy grandmaster. To me, this jade slip just happened to make up for what I lacked in theory and experience. It has consolidated my foundation and broadened my horizons, allowing my future alchemy road to become even broader. In these 10 days, I have only roughly glanced over it and memorized it. To fully master it, I will need to slowly practice alchemy. He crushed the jade slip into countless pieces. Before Taoist Wang left, he had said that he couldn't leave this behind. But this wasn't just empty words. There was a deep meaning behind it. If Qin Yu didn't even understand this, then how could he be worthy of Taoist Wang giving him his alchemy inheritance? Qin Yu closed his eyes and calmly adjusted his breathing, restoring his mind. After a day and night, he opened his eyes once more. His gaze fell onto the 8th furnace, incomparably bright. Immortal Eclipse Valley's 8 great furnaces had been passed down to this day. Naturally, they weren't just powerful pill furnaces for refining pills. What was most precious was that the 8 great furnaces came with their own inheritances. After refining them, one would have a chance to fuse a wisp of their soul into the 8th furnace's alchemy inheritance, samsara, and personally experience the process of the previous furnace masters learning alchemy. This was the greatest good fortune of the 8 great furnaces. Of course, opening the inheritance samsara would be an extremely heavy loss to the 8 great furnaces. The furnace spirits had their own wisdom and wouldn't easily open it. Love go blittle say net chu. However, the 9 earth furnace, the name of the 8th furnace, had been blinded by lust. It had been bewitched by the fleeting flame furnace and had long forgotten everything else. Qin Yu threatened it and made a few more requests. The 9 earth furnace immediately knelt on the ground, howling that it had to open the inheritance samsara. If it didn't then, that was the same as looking down on it. Of course, after being without a master for 100 years, the 9 earth furnace had accumulated a great deal of strength. This was also one of the reasons it easily submitted. Qin Yu took a deep breath and said, 9 earth, let's begin. Within the lake of magma, the 9 earth furnace that was absorbing the power of fire suddenly broke through the magma. It trembled and rumbled, causing the entire lake of magma to overturn mountains and seas. A dazzling divine light gushed out from the runes on the surface of the furnace, condensing into a raging current that submerged Qin Yu's figure. This raging current didn't burn him at all. Rather, when it fell on his body, it was as if he were soaking in a hot spring. His consciousness gradually relaxed, and he fell into a deep sleep. Then, Qin Yu had an incomparably long dream. In his dream, he was a young pill furnace boy. From looking after the furnace fire, to selecting medicinal materials, to alchemy, to assisting in alchemy, and then to becoming an independent furnace master. Step by step, he steadily climbed upwards until he finally became an alchemy grandmaster of his generation. Afterwards, he became a medicine garden guard, from taking care of the spirit plants to cultivating them, and then by a lucky chance, he coincidentally stepped onto the road of alchemy. It was only then that he discovered that what suited him the most was alchemy. Afterwards, he became a woodcutter youth. In the belly of a mountain, he inadvertently obtained a tattered beast-skin book. 10 years later, he stepped onto the road of alchemy. 100 years later, his fame spread far and wide, and he died of old age at 900 years. He inherited samsara. A wisp of his soul fused into samsara, fusing into the experiences of his predecessors and walking through the endless years. This was samsara, and it was also a dream. Moreover, it was an unimaginably great stroke of good fortune. In his dream, Qin Yu walked through life after life. From weak to strong, from lowly to noble, he followed the path of alchemy left behind by his predecessors. As he walked down the road of life, he sublimated and transformed. Outside the 10,000-foot peak, the mountain stabilizing seals all appeared. They emitted 1,000,000,000,000 beams of light that burned the skies red. Immortal Eclipse Valley's great array formation revolved on its own, imprisoning this boundless aura. Otherwise, everything within 1,000 miles would be affected. Even so, for a short period of time, this phenomenon attracted countless complex gazes from Immortal Eclipse Valley. Envy, jealousy, awe, confusion, bewilderment, all sorts of emotions wove together. But there was only one emotion that was remorse and hatred. Eclipse Yen leaned against a soft couch, lifted up by several disciples. His eyes widened as he looked towards the station of the 8th furnace. Although he wasn't a furnace master, he had still managed to refine the 8th furnace before. He naturally knew what this scene before him represented. The 8th furnace had opened the samsara inheritance. For Qin Yu, it had opened the samsara inheritance. His mind rumbled and his head throbbed with a stabbing pain. There was only one thought in Eclipse Yan's mind. This should have been his. Qin Yu, he had taken away everything. He had become the master of the 8th furnace and obtained the samsara inheritance. A burning sensation spread through his chest. His throat seemed to be blocked by something, making it impossible for him to breathe. Eclipse Yan's chest violently heaved up and down, emitting loud gasping sounds. "Great uncle, what is it? Don't scare me." The Eclipse clan juniors cried out in alarm. Puff! A mouthful of blood sprayed all over his face. Zhao Yin fell to the ground and breathed his last. Eclipse clan 8th level golden core. Anger attacking the heart, dead. After a brief silence, all the Eclipse clan disciples screamed out in panic, "Great uncle died! Great uncle died!" On this day, Immortal Eclipse Valley was plunged into chaos. Eclipse Yan's death was like adding oil to the fire, causing the discontent of the Eclipse clan juniors to reach the peak. Eclipse Shueji cried out, insisting that Qin Yu was the murderer who killed her brother. The Eclipse clan juniors were incited and swarmed towards the 8th furnace station. Pale Crucible was in seclusion and didn't come out. Su Ao and Fan Zhonghai were forced to take action and forcefully suppress the Eclipse clan juniors. But this action also completely tore apart the last bit of compromise between the two sides. The conflict between the Eclipse clan juniors and disciples of other surnames raged like wildfire. Several fights broke out over the course of several days. Although no one died, one Eclipse clan junior and 2 disciples of other surnames were completely crippled, causing the conflict between both sides to intensify. Immortal Eclipse Valley was surging with undercurrents. Su Ao and Fan Zhonghai were silent. Neither of them thought that the situation would deteriorate to such a degree in such a short period of time. As they thought about how they were under pressure, and yet someone was comfortably in seclusion, accepting the samsara inheritance that even they envied, they could only bitterly smile. Fan Zhonghai sighed. "Junior uncle has hidden himself and doesn't want to see anyone, but the 2 of us are running around like crazy. Just what is this?" Su Ao shook his head. Not showing himself is the smartest decision he made. The Eclipse clan's anger is monstrous right now. If they really meet, there will inevitably be trouble. After some time, when the resentment in their hearts fades a little, it won't be too late to think of a way to resolve it. Fan Zhonghai said, I also know, but I'm just a bit unhappy in my heart. Even if he is junior uncle, there's no need to drag us down with him. Sueo hesitated for a long time. This matter should only be an accident. After all, no one thought that Eclipse Yen would be so narrow-minded. Fan Zhonghai bitterly smiled. I can empathize with Eclipse Yen. He is about to finish refining it, and if he were to see the samsara inheritance again, no one would be able to bear it. Sueo rubbed his temples. All right, let's not talk about this anymore. Immediately pass down the order and have them suppress the disciples of other surnames. Don't clash with the Eclipse clan juniors. Perhaps once the old ancestor leaves seclusion, everything will calm down. Fan Zhonghai was silent for several breaths of time. Senior apprentice brother Su, why do you think the old ancestor would suddenly go into seclusion at this time? Sueo had a dignified expression. He said, Junior apprentice brother Fan, this isn't something you or I need to consider. Fan Zhonghai frowned. He helplessly shook his head. All right, I will arrange it now. He stood up and hurried away. Now that Sueo was alone, he finally didn't need to hold on any longer. He leaned back in his chair, his face cloudy and uncertain. If Fan Zhonghai could think of this, how could he not? The old ancestor's seclusion seemed to have some hidden meaning. Could it be that the old ancestor was using this matter to deliberately warn him not to be too ambitious? After thinking for a long time, Sueo took a deep breath, his expression firm. He had received the graciousness of the old ancestor, and that was why he was where he was today. Although he had extravagant hopes for the throne of Immortal Eclipse Valley, if the old ancestor didn't allow it, then he could only put it down. Currently, the most important thing was to maintain the stability of the valley. Chapter 78. Genius in a Second, Remember Love Go. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. Underground, Magma Lake, Black Stone. Qin Yu let out a long breath. He opened his eyes, but there was no burst of light, nor was there any surge of aura. He simply sat there, quiet and tranquil. It was as if he had fused together with the black stone beneath him and the space around him. This was a marvelous feeling, one that could only be sensed but not described. It was only when he stretched his waist and his spine began to emit crackling sounds that his entire being seemed to come alive. It was like he had emerged from some ancient landscape painting and returned to the world of mortals with flesh and blood. The eighth furnace restrained all of its light. The crimson furnace body dimmed and swayed as it flew over. Qin Yu blinked his eyes. His mind was blank, and he wasn't able to respond for a moment. The eighth furnace was enraged. The magma lake began to tumble, and a fiery hot aura rushed towards him. Qin Yu was startled for a moment before he regained his composure. He helplessly said, I will certainly keep my promise to you, but are you sure you want to face the fleeting flame furnace in such a weak state? The eighth furnace used its actions to answer. It turned and rushed into the magma lake. Its threatening posture seemed to warn Qin Yu not to play any tricks, as if it couldn't wait any longer. Qin Yu shook his head. He stood up and looked at the magma lake in front of him, a faint smile on his lips. This dream lasted for 16 days. In this dream, he experienced 16 lives. Although he didn't personally experience them, and there were some places that gradually became blurry, the faintest trace of his soul still had a profound influence on him. On the surface, Qin Yu didn't seem to have changed. His aura was the same as before, but his temperament was much warmer and mellower. He was like a dusty wine or a 1,000-year-old jade. This was a gift from the baptism of time. Qin Yu was far from being able to achieve this. But through the tricks he used in this dream world, he had also obtained these traces of time. Of course, this wasn't the key point. In a dream that lasted 16 days, the key point was the influence of time and tempering of one's mind, as well as all sorts of experiences of alchemy. There was no one that could become a true alchemy grandmaster through a dream. But Qin Yu already had this background, or rather, this inheritance. When his alchemy strength reached a certain level, he could naturally unseal it and obtain the corresponding alchemy strength. Taoist Wang had spent his life consolidating his foundation, and the eighth furnace, inheritance, had accumulated a deep background. In less than a month, Qin Yu could be said to have transformed from a carp to a dragon. These gifts would become powerful assistants in the future, allowing him to walk further and more firmly on the path of cultivation. From the start of his trip to Immortal Eclipse Valley until now, there had been many accidents. Finally, things had developed to this day. This was an extremely vivid lesson for Qin Yu. Plans would never be able to keep up with changes, and hidden within these changes were many opportunities and lucky chances. Of course, it was only because he recognized a cheap senior apprentice brother in Immortal Eclipse Valley that he was able to accomplish all of this. Although it was closely related to his encounter with Tsang Mengzi's remains, it was also a stroke of luck. Love, go small, say Netka, but no one in the world can be lucky all the time. Perhaps the next unexpected change will hide a fatal danger. Qin Yu closed his eyes. He didn't cultivate, nor did he meditate. All he did was quietly think about his recent actions and see if there were any mistakes he had made. Because after 16 days of dreaming and experiencing 16 lives, he had learned more than just the Tao of alchemy. First, be careful. Second, there is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Su Ao and Fan Zhonghai forcefully suppressed Qin Yu. Qin Yu accepted the inheritance and went into seclusion. The sharp conflict on the surface of Immortal Eclipse Valley gradually subsided. But in secret, the conflicts between the disciples of the Eclipse clan and the outer disciples never stopped. All sorts of stories played out every day. The main character of today's little story came from a small and unremarkable cultivation family of the Southern Empire. Although he had some talent in alchemy, he had no roots in Immortal Eclipse Valley and could only be considered a minor character at the very edge. Eclipse Shoqing was 36 years old. His talent wasn't too high, nor was it too low. But because his surname was Zhao and he had a revered golden core mother, he was supported to become a steward of the selection department. Although he didn't have a high position of authority, he still managed dozens of people, large and small. His daily affairs were leisurely, and he could be considered a comfortable position. Of these dozens of subordinates, there was one that Eclipse Shoqing found extremely displeasing to the eye. It wasn't because he wasn't respectful or because he wasn't diligent in his work, but because he had lost face to Eclipse Shoqing in an internal alchemy competition. Immortal Eclipse Valley was founded on alchemy and passed down alchemy techniques. Everything they did placed the most importance on alchemy cultivation. If a steward's skill was inferior to a lowly servant, how could he convince the masses? Although no one said anything after the incident, Eclipse Shoqing still harbored a grudge in his heart. It was common for him to reprimand him, so it wasn't strange for him to find a reason to punish him. The minor character was meek and meek. But for some unknown reason, as time passed, Eclipse Shoqing found him more and more annoying. Luckily, there was finally a chance. The conflicts in the valley became increasingly serious. Perhaps it was because this minor character was on guard, but during this period of time, he didn't find any excuse to attack him. Helplessly, Eclipse Shoqing used some methods to lure him into a trap. It was simple. He would frame him. Several spirit herbs that a minor character could come into contact with, even if they couldn't be considered precious, were still punishable by whipping according to the rules of Immortal Eclipse Valley. 30 lashes wouldn't kill someone, but that was because there were no arrangements. Eclipse Shoqing relied on his mother's status. His cultivation and alchemy skills were mediocre, but he had some strength in his words. Thus, the preparations were easily made. The one carrying out the punishment would be Immortal Eclipse Valley's most senior torture hall expert. 30 lashes wouldn't be able to see anything wrong with them, but it would still be enough to take someone's life. Theft was an evil deed. The punishment would be carried out in broad daylight to serve as a warning to others. With the Eclipse clan juniors and foreign disciples filled with conflict and hostility towards each other. This punishment attracted a great deal of attention. A great figure of the torture hall announced that the punishment would be carried out at Donperch platform. Although this wasn't the core region of the valley, it was connected to various transportation hubs. Moreover, this place was very close to the 8th furnace station. Naturally, this great figure of the torture hall was surnamed Eclipse. The time has come. Bring Zhang Zhongxiu. The torture hall cultivator's voice was cold, as if he could pierce through the heart. Eclipse Shouqing's lips curled up. He swept his eyes over the many figures beneath the platform, excited as if he had somehow managed to steal the limelight. After today, he might be able to become one of the representatives of the younger generation that resisted the foreign disciples and obtain the attention of the elders of his clan. And the price he had to pay for this was Zhang Zhongxiu. Zhang Zhongxiu was shackled and pushed onto Donperch platform. He didn't seem any different from before, but his fists were clenched and his eyes were bloodshot, revealing anger and sorrow. He didn't argue, because he had already said everything he needed to say in the torture hall. The fact that he was still sent here explained everything. He was pressed onto a stone block and his hands and feet were tied up. The scar-faced torture hall cultivator walked forwards with a whip in his hand. As he saw Zhang Zhongxiu's face from afar, he fiercely smiled. Pa, pa, the sound of the whip spread out. Skin split open and blood flowed out, dyeing his robes red and dripping onto the ground. Zhang Zhongxiu's eyes widened as he struggled. He could feel the aura of death coming from the whip. He didn't want to die, not only because he was afraid, but because he was the hope of his entire family. But all of this was futile. The whip continued to fall. His body gradually turned numb and his consciousness began to fade. Was he going to die? In East Stream Town, he had obtained the pill bestowed by the Grandmaster to change his destiny. But it seemed he couldn't escape death in the end. But to die like this, he really wasn't willing. Zhang Zhongxiu struggled to keep his eyes open. He looked up into the skies. The whip howled towards him, ready to smash his face into pieces in the next moment. Pa! The whip didn't fall. It flew back at an even faster speed and struck the face of the torture hall master. His scarred face was a mess, and he fell to the ground, screaming in pain. The light in front of him dimmed, and a figure appeared in front of him. Zhang Zhongxiu subconsciously widened his eyes, and the corner of his mouth twitched. He seemed to want to say something, but in the end, it turned into a bitter smile. Qin Yu shattered the shackles and helped him sit down. I was invited to come, but Brother Tseng doesn't seem to be able to entertain me. Zhang Zhongxiu coughed several times and struggled to bow. Thank you for saving me, my lord. Qin Yu helped him stop the bleeding. He lightly said, they are only invited friends. Where is this lord from? The disciplinary hall cultivator seemed to be shaken to the core. Only now did the disciplinary hall cultivator angrily roar out, Where did you come from? How dare you disrupt the punishment and injure someone from my disciplinary hall? Seize him. Qin Yu drew back his hand. You rest first. Wait for me to deal with them. He turned and looked at the disciplinary hall cultivators, his expression indifferent. Stop! With a loud shout, a golden core cultivator appeared. His face was dark and gloomy. He clenched his teeth and cupped his hands together. Greetings, junior uncle. Little martial uncle. Today in Immortal Eclipse Valley, there was only one person with this title. Whoosh! Donperch platform was in an uproar. The eyes of countless hot-blooded Eclipse clan juniors turned icy cold and they clenched their teeth. As for the disciples that weren't surnamed Zhao, most of them revealed looks of worship. Eclipse She straightened himself. He had served as the disciplinary hall's deputy for many years, and the slaughter energy around him was thick and terrifying. His eyes were cold and callous, and very few people dared to look at him. Little martial uncle, although you have an honorable status, the valley's punishments were established by our ancestors. Are your actions today provoking the disciplinary hall? Or are you disrespecting my immortal Eclipse Valley's past ancestors? This accusation was extremely heavy, and it was obvious he had ill intentions in his heart. Qin Yu had a calm expression. Who are you? Disciplinary Hall's deputy, Eclipse Shi. With your cultivation, can't you see that he is about to be beaten to death? Eclipse Shi was expressionless. He hasn't died yet. He couldn't continue speaking. Qin Yu narrowed his eyes. He no longer had any thoughts of tangling with him. I will take him away. Eclipse Shi's eyes flashed with a cold light. Little Marshal Uncle has an honorable status, so he naturally enjoys special privileges. As long as no one objects today, you may take him away. So what if someone objects? Simple. Eclipse Shi pointed a finger. Then I ask you to suppress all those who object. Qin Yu was silent. Eclipse Shi's lips curled up. Without giving him a chance to speak, he turned and roared. Among you, is there anyone who objects? Eclipse Shoqing's eyes brightened. He knew that his mother hated Qin Yu to the bone. If he could make her lose face today, he would surely win his mother's favor. And most importantly, everyone knew that Qin Yu's status was respected, but his cultivation was only at the 4th level of foundation establishment. It was far too sloppy and ordinary. As for the 8th furnace, if Qin Yu summoned the power of the furnace on the Dawn Perch platform, the Eclipse clan's elders wouldn't stand idly by. Great Uncle Eclipse Shi's actions were giving him a wonderful opportunity. Little nephew objects. With a loud shout, Eclipse Shoqing's voice was filled with awe and majesty. My immortal Eclipse Valley has an inheritance of 1,000 years. How can we disregard the rules for a single person? Little Marshal Uncle, if you want to take Zhang Zhongxiu away, you must first pass through me. Who? The aura of an 8th level foundation establishment broke out from his body. The brief silence was suddenly broken by a loud shout. Senior Apprentice Brother Shoqing, good job! The men of my Eclipse clan are full of vigor and vigor. If you want to break the rules, you must have sufficient strength. If you use seniority to suppress others, you will only be ridiculed by others. The disciples that weren't surnamed Zhao all revealed worried expressions. They cursed Eclipse Shoqing for being shameless. But with things having come this far, it was difficult to advance or retreat. No matter what choice he made, little Marshal Uncle Qin would inevitably lose all face. Chapter 79. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. Zhang Zhongxiu anxiously coughed out a mouthful of blood. Junior Granduncle, don't worry about this disciple. Eclipse, she lightly said, if Junior Uncle leaves now, then we can pretend that nothing happened at the disciplinary hall. Qin Yu's lips curved up. Immortal Eclipse Valley was truly worthy of being the #1 immortal sect. Eclipse Yen was like this, Eclipse Shi was like this, and even Eclipse Shoqing, who jumped out, was like this. Could it be that they had never kicked an iron plate before? If that was the case, then he didn't mind being the first. Qin Yu said, bring Zhang Zhongxiu down first. Eclipse Shi's eyes brightened. Good. We will do as Junior Uncle says. He waved his hand to summon 2 disciples. Qin Yu said, there's no need to trouble yourself. He helped Zhang Zhongxiu down from the Dawn Perch platform. He smiled at the woman in front of him. Miss Qi, I'll have to trouble you to look after him. Qi Jiao bit her lips and nodded. Thank you. Qin Yu turned and left. Zhang Zhongxiu shouted out loud, Junior Granduncle. Qin Yu didn't look back. I know what I'm doing. Today's rescue was true, but it was also a probe. Looking at his departing back, Qi Jiao's thoughts were in chaos. In the future, she would only think that Qin Yu had died, but now she suddenly heard news of him. Senior Pill Crucible's junior apprentice brother, Immortal Eclipse Valley's junior granduncle, had become a great figure that stood above the highest heavens. But why did he always walk on the edge of a steel wire? He had seized the 8th furnace and forced Eclipse, Yen, to his death. Seeing Qin Yu walk over, Eclipse Shi's cold mind stirred. He shouted out, "Eclipse Shouqing, don't overdo it!" This was clearly nonsense. If he wasn't even sure what the point was, then how could he stop? Perhaps his true meaning was to leave him with his life. Eclipse Shouqing sneered. "I asked Junior Granduncle to give me some pointers." He waved his hand and magic power surged out, condensing into a black fish in the void. Its eyes were blue and its killing intent was astonishing. Its tail swept out, revealing a mouth full of fangs as it bit down. Qin Yu lifted a hand and thrust out. Although it didn't seem fast, it just so happened that it landed on the blackfish's head. Its body stiffened and then it loudly shattered, stirring up strong winds. Zhao Shouqing's expression changed slightly. He didn't expect that his all-out attack would be broken so easily. However, as expected of a disciple of a large sect, his reaction was extremely fast. He stepped back and raised his hand to summon a shield magic treasure. The defensive power of this item was astonishing, but it also had extraordinary offensive power. Zhao Shouqing was full of confidence as he activated his mana shield to expand rapidly. This shield magic tool was bestowed upon him by his mother. A single strike from it could compare to an early golden core. No matter how strong a golden core was, beneath the strength of a golden core, they were nothing more than chickens and dogs. How could Qin Yu be an exception? Just as he was about to attack, the black shadow closed in on him. Then there was a loud bang, and the shield magic treasure trembled and wailed. A violent force surged out, and Zhao Shouqing spat out several mouthfuls of blood in midair. His head tilted to the side, and he fainted. The whole place was dead silent. Zhao Sagittarius, an 8th-level Foundation establishment cultivator, wielded a magic treasure, but he was sent flying by a single punch. The one who attacked was a 4th-level Foundation establishment cultivator, 4th level. 4th my ass. The juniors of the Eclipse clan gnashed their teeth. They were actually pretending to be pigs to eat tigers. They were too despicable. The foreign disciples were in high spirits as they watched this scene with smiles on their faces. Zhao, she hurriedly inspected his injuries. After several breaths of time, his face sank. Zhao Shouqing's arms, chest, and knees were all broken. Even if he had excellent medicines to treat them, there might still be hidden dangers left behind. He angrily roared, "Junior uncle, don't you think you were too heavy-handed against a junior disciple?" Qin Yu lightly said, "He hasn't died yet." These words were very familiar. Zhao, she's complexion paled and blue veins popped out on his neck. Suddenly, there was the sound of breaking air and several figures howled over. "Shouqing!" With a loud scream, Eclipse Shuzi's face twisted. "Qin Yu, you harmed my big brother first, and then killed my son. The two of us cannot exist under the same sky." The several people beside her also had ugly complexions. They had been hiding in the shadows this entire time, but they never expected Qin Yu to have such methods. They were caught off guard and couldn't help but stare helplessly on as Zhao Shouqing was severely wounded. Eclipse Shuzi stepped forwards. Bang! The aura of a golden core erupted. Killing intent nearly materialized. Beneath the Dawn Perch platform, the complexions of the onlookers changed. They instinctively drew back under the impact of this aura. Eclipse, she cupped his hands together. "Fifth Elder, since today's matter involves the disciplinary hall, I will personally take action and ask Junior Uncle for some guidance." Eclipse Wu coldly glanced at him and whispered several words. Eclipse Shuzi clenched her teeth and turned, saying, "Eclipse She, don't worry. If anything happens, I will handle it." Eclipse She coldly said, "Junior Uncle's strength is astonishing and his methods are cruel. I naturally don't dare to hold back." He turned and cupped his hands together. "Junior Uncle, please." Qin Yu had no expression. "You really don't need to hold back." In the next moment, Everyone understood the meaning behind his words. Bang! The ground shook and fissures wove together into patterns. Qin Yu exploded outwards. Eclipse, she flicked his sleeves, and a rich blood red light rose up, swirling around him like a fog. The thick aura made one feel as if they had fallen into an icy lake. This was the disciplinary hall's unique magic art, blood slaughter. Its might was astonishing, and it also contained a terrifying divine sense attack. With Eclipse, she's 4th level golden core cultivation. He had once used this technique to directly kill a demonic path 7th level golden core powerhouse. With a thought, blood energy suddenly swelled up, covering Qin Yu. The Eclipse clan juniors beneath the Dawn Perch platform revealed happy expressions. Good. Just what sort of power is this blood slaughter? Ordinary golden cores wouldn't even dare to touch it. To actually rush him like that, he is simply stupid to the extreme. With great Uncle Eclipse, she's cultivation. Even a late golden core can give up on escaping unscathed after falling into this blood slaughter. Suddenly, Zhao eyes widened and shock appeared in his cold eyes. He took a step back, but it was already too late. Qin Yu was like a vicious beast. He tore through the blood energy and rushed out. His robes were torn and corroded, but his complexion didn't change at all. In the blink of an eye, he caught up to Eclipse she and punched out. Bang! The blood energy around Eclipse, she caved in, wildly surging and twisting to the extreme. Although it didn't shatter, a terrifying strength still broke into his body, wreaking havoc. Eclipse, she gulped a mouthful of blood. Just as he was about to counterattack, that fist suddenly turned into a palm that tore through the blood fog and grabbed his neck. It was as steady as a boulder, as if it were cast from steel. A single breath of that terrifying strength could separate his head from his body. Eclipse, she's body stiffened. His magic power stagnated, and he was unable to suppress his injuries. With a stuffy cough, blood flowed out from his nose and mouth. He didn't need to hold back because he didn't have the qualifications to do so. Qin Yu let go and drew back. Eclipse, she gasped for breath. In that moment, just now, he had truly felt the rich taste of death. Fear flashed in his eyes. After a long time, he bowed. Thank you, junior uncle, for showing mercy. He turned and left. He no longer had the face to stay. Qin Yu had a calm expression. Who else? An 8th level foundation establishment, Eclipse Shoqing, had crushed him with a punch. A 4th level golden core, Eclipse, she had also used a punch. Qin Yu's figure was like a great valley shrouded in fog under a dark sky, unfathomably deep. He stood there, his aura no different from before. But at this time, no matter how hot-blooded the Eclipse clan juniors were, there was still awe in their eyes. For cultivators, cultivation was always above all else. The strong deserved respect. Whew! Strong winds rose up, mixed with a cold chill. Eclipse Shueji coldly said, Qin Yu, if you want to save someone, you will have to pass through me. Her aura continued to climb. 7th level golden core, 8th level golden core, 9th level golden core. She broke through layer after layer. In the blink of an eye, she reached the peak golden core realm. She was just a step away from the nascent soul realm. After a brief moment of shock, the Eclipse clan juniors were overjoyed. They roared out in their hearts. Someone that could truly represent the strength of their Eclipse clan had appeared. Brat Qin Yu, don't be so rampant. Watch as I, the 5th elder, suppress and trample upon you. Eclipse Wu's eyes widened. Even he didn't know that Eclipse Shueji's cultivation had reached such a boundary. Under the pressure of a peak golden core, the entire audience fell silent. Stop! With a loud shout, Su Ao arrived. What are you doing? Eclipse Shueji screeched. Su Ao, today we must settle the matter between him and me. If you dare to interfere, I will not rest until you die. Eclipse Wu coldly sneered. You didn't interfere when Shoqing was severely wounded. You didn't interfere when Eclipse she was defeated. And you blocked the 5th elder's attack. Su Ao, just what are you thinking? Do you really think that my Eclipse Clan juniors won't dare to shed all pretense of cordiality with you? Whoosh, Fan Zhonghai arrived. He lowered his voice. Senior apprentice brother Su, don't worry about this any longer. Su Ao frowned. Just take it as giving the old ancestor a reason. The firm resolve in Su Ao's eyes instantly faded away. His back was still straight, but his aura was a bit more dispirited. Fan Zhonghai loudly said, "We will no longer interfere in the battle between Junior Uncle and the fifth elder." Eclipse Xueji's eyes were as sharp as knives. "Qinyu, prepare to die." She lifted a hand and pressed down. The skies suddenly darkened, and the phantom of a great fish appeared in the dark clouds. Although it didn't have the shape of a dragon, it still possessed dragon energy. As it swayed its head and tail, its momentum was astonishing. The fifth elder of Immortal Eclipse Valley, the one who controlled the Taiyuan furnace, was actually born with the water attribute and was able to control exquisite water magic arts. This was hard to imagine, but in the next moment, an even more astonishing scene occurred. The great fish opened its mouth, and a trace of red appeared between its fangs. The temperature between the heavens and earth began to rapidly rise. Qin Yu's complexion shrank. Bang! A pillar of fire fell from the skies. Water and fire fuse. Su Ao's complexion was dignified. Fan Zhonghai sighed. No wonder Eclipse Xueji was able to reach the peak of Golden Core in such a short period of time. So she had perceived the mysteries of water and fire. Su Ao didn't speak again. He took a deep breath, and magic power surged around his body. He could watch the battle from the sidelines, but he wouldn't allow Qinyu to be killed. A figure flashed, and Eclipse Wu appeared in front of him. His expression was ice cold. My brother died, and my son was crippled. The fifth elder has a reason to attack. Senior apprentice brother Su, you had best keep your promise and not interfere. Bang! As the pillar of fire fell, the Dawn Perch platform began to melt. Waves of heat swept out, causing the surrounding cultivators to cry out in alarm and retreat. In the next moment, they all cried out in alarm. Qinyu appeared several dozen feet away. In that critical moment, he had managed to avoid the destructive strike of the pillar of fire. Only Su Ao, Fan Zhonghai, and the others saw a blood-red light appear around his body. Fan Zhonghai stood beside Su Ao. He smiled and said, "Of course, senior apprentice brother Su will not interfere." Eclipse Wu's complexion paled. Eclipse Xueji's complexion darkened. She never thought that her all-out strike would miss. Qin Yu's speed was inconceivably fast. At this time, a blood-red light erupted in front of her, and a terrifying chill rose from the depths of her heart. Eclipse Xueji flicked her sleeves, and a black and red light erupted. Bang! There was a dull thumping sound. The black and red light wildly revolved, twisting and forming a deep fist mark. Eclipse Xueji was frightened. Before this, she had been cursing Eclipse for being useless. But now she realized just what sort of terrifying strength was contained in Qin Yu's fist. She had used water and fire as her defense, and was confident that no one at the Golden Core realm would be able to break through it. But now she actually heard it groaning in pain. But since it hadn't been broken through, it was time for Qin Yu to suffer. The defense of water and fire not only had a defensive strength, but the counterattack was enough to tear apart the flesh of his fist. Qin Yu frowned, as if he never thought that his defense would be so formidable. But in the blink of an eye, he composed himself and punched out a second time. Within the defense of water and fire, Eclipse Xueji's eyes widened, her face filled with disbelief. Nothing had happened. His fist was actually unharmed. How was this possible? As she was left dumbfounded, Qin Yu had already punched out 7 times in a row, each fist filled with ferocious momentum. Eclipse Xueji couldn't stabilize her body. She was chased around by a blood-red light like a ball, tumbling around in distress. The giant fish in the black clouds above roared in anger. It spat out columns of fire, and its aura withered, but it couldn't even touch the hem of Qin Yu's clothes. Perhaps, in true strength, the two of them might be on par. But by relying on the blood escape art, what Qin Yu displayed was absolute suppression. His opponent was the fifth elder of Immortal Eclipse Valley, the peak golden core Eclipse Shueji, who had grasped the mysteries of water and fire. Perhaps this couldn't be considered a complete suppression, but it was absolutely ravaging. The Eclipse clan juniors all cried. They were wrong, they were wrong. Zhang Zhongxiu's eyes widened. In just a few short years, Qin Yu had become so powerful. Qi Jiao had a complex look in her eyes. She finally determined that it was impossible for her and this man to ever cross paths. She sighed inwardly and let out a long breath. Unexpectedly, she relaxed and felt her entire body relax. A light smile lifted the corners of her lips. At the very least, being able to see the juniors of the Eclipse clan suffer setback was a small comfort to her. This was because it was really hard to like them. Fan Jianghai's face was full of praise. Junior uncle has hidden his depths. Su Ao was silent for several breaths of time. He slowly said, I am inferior to him. Eclipse Wu's complexion turned twice as pale. Chapter 80. Genius 1. Second, remember love, go away. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. Bang, bang. Loud explosions rang out without end. Blood red light shot out in all directions, nearly connecting together. Most people could only judge where Qin Yu was attacking from the traces left behind by Eclipse Shuzi. As for Eclipse Xian, Eclipse Ming, and the others, they were all shocked. Su Ao turned around. Let's end this. Junior apprentice sister, Eclipse cannot win. If she couldn't win, she could only be defeated. Eclipse Wu opened his mouth. He wanted to say that Qin Yu couldn't continue using a secret technique, but he had already punched out at least 30 times without slowing down. He couldn't bring himself to say these words. Several Eclipse clan powerhouses had dazed expressions. Were they going to be defeated like this? So what if they were unwilling? Even the peak golden core Eclipse Shuzi, who controlled water and fire, had been rolled over. So what could they do? Eclipse Xian sucked in a deep breath. We admit. His complexion changed, and he looked up. Bang! Eclipse Shuzi's aura rose, and a boundless pressure swept out. But everyone could clearly sense that this wasn't her strength. It was the fifth furnace. She had borrowed the strength of the fifth furnace. In the skies, the black clouds turned red. Endless steam rose up, filling the skies with a vast expanse of whiteness. The temperature rose once more. The great fish roared in pain, as if it were being burned by flames. Its body twisted and elongated until it finally turned into a fierce fire snake. Its cruel eyes locked onto Qin Yu. Su Ao roared. Junior apprentice Sister Eclipse, do not recklessly use the power of the great furnace. But Eclipse Shuzi, whose eyes were completely red with anger, couldn't hear his words. The fire snake turned and hurtled straight towards Qin Yu. It was extremely fast, turning into a line of fire in the air. Even with Qin Yu's astonishing speed, he still might not be able to dodge it. So he didn't run away. With a thought, the fleeting flame furnace appeared. In the distance, there was an angry roar. Another terrifying mass of flames appeared, and a giant fire alligator drilled out. Its tail swept out and sent the fire snake flying away. The fire snake angrily hissed. Its eyes turned even colder as it rushed back. The fire alligator smiled at the fleeting flame furnace and glared at Qin Yu. Then it turned into the bitter cold of winter, its eyes filled with contempt. Bang! The two furnace spirits began to fight. The eighth furnace had suffered severe losses from activating the samsara of inheritances. The fire alligator's eyes were filled with exhaustion, but its attacks were ruthless and tyrannical, completely suppressing the flames of the fire snake. An opportunity presented itself. The fire crocodile bit down on the fire snake, while the fire snake went berserk and wrapped itself around it. The fire crocodile's scales crackled as they shattered and dissipated into nothingness, but didn't seem to have any intention of letting go. Instead, it bit down harder and harder. With a mournful wail, the fire snake loosened its body and fell to the ground softly. Its eyes were filled with a pleading look. The fire crocodile shook its head violently and threw it away. It then roared towards the sky. Even though he was covered in cuts and bruises, his aura became even stronger, like a king declaring his supreme authority. The fire snake bowed its head in reverence before turning around and disappearing without a trace. The outcome had been decided. The fire crocodile lowered its head, its huge eyes filled with ruthlessness as it glared at Zhao Shuzi. When it landed on the ground, the terrifyingly high temperature melted everything it came into contact with. Every step it took made a deep and loud sound. The entire dawn perch platform was shaking. Zhao Shuzi paled, and fear gushed out from the depths of her eyes. The fire crocodile fiercely raised its front claws and bared its fangs as if it wanted to eat someone. Qin Yu glanced at it, too lazy to bother with it. This fellow was just trying to scare people. If it really killed the fifth elder, while others couldn't do anything to it, that old Taoist pill crucible would definitely catch it and beat it up. Suddenly, the world fell silent. This sort of silence wasn't silence. It was like an extreme cold had arrived, instantly freezing everything. Trapped within, one was like a fish in ice, unable to move. Their hearts filled with fear. Bang! The fire crocodile was sent flying backwards. Its scales shattered and it crashed into the ground. It struggled and roared, but no matter how it tried, it couldn't stand up. A figure appeared on the high platform. He had white hair and black eyes, and there was a dark red between his eyebrows. Slaughter energy lingered around his body. Wherever he stood, it was like a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, leaving one's entire body cold. What a bunch of trash! A shout like thunder exploded in Qin Yu's ears. He stuffily coughed, his face pale. As for the others, they were released from the ice. Zhao Shuzi was pleasantly surprised. "Greetings, great uncle." Eclipse Xin, Eclipse Wu, Eclipse Ming, and the others also bowed. Su Ao and Fan Zhonghai's heart sank. They took a deep breath and cupped their hands across their chests. One of Immortal Eclipse Valley's 4 great nascent souls, Eclipse Lenqing. His eyes were like sabers that cut through several Eclipse clan masters. His voice was thick and cold as he said, "If one is defeated, then the second one will come up. If 2 are defeated, then the third one will come up. Even if we have to drag him out, we have to exhaust him to death. If my Eclipse clan didn't have such tenacity, then we would have been exterminated by others over the countless years. We will follow Great Uncle's teachings." Eclipse Xin and the others respectfully said. Eclipse Lenqing's eyes were cold and indifferent. "Just because you have some tricks up your sleeves, you dare to show off in my Immortal Eclipse Valley? Even if you are Pill Crucible's junior apprentice brother, I will still let you know just how high the heavens are and how deep the earth is." Qin Yu's body stiffened like iron. Su Ao shouted out loud, "High Master, show mercy!" Eclipse Lenqing turned around. Su Ao stuffily coughed, and blood flowed out from the corners of his lips. Qin Yu had a chance to catch his breath. His eyes flashed with an order. Beneath his calm and cold gaze, endless madness and cruelty surged. The fire alligator roared. The power of trillions of flames between the heavens and earth crazily fused into its body. Its injuries rapidly healed, and its body began to grow. In the blink of an eye, it reached 1,000 feet. It was truly worthy of being called a colossus. But what was even more terrifying was the volcanic strength within its body. Where the 8th furnace was, the 10,000-foot mountain peak trembled. Countless mountain-stabilizing seals flew up, howling around it and emitting shrill, whistling sounds. Violent vibrations came from deep underground, shaking the 10,000-foot mountain peak. This caused the tremors to rapidly spread out for hundreds of miles around. Sueo's eyes widened. For the first time, he revealed a look of shock. Fan Zhenghai, Eclipse Xan, and the others were left dumbfounded. But then, they couldn't suppress the fear in their eyes. As the masters of the great furnaces, they were well aware that this scene meant that the eighth furnace had the intention to self-destruct and perish together with its enemy. Immortal Eclipse Valley's 8 great furnaces had mysterious origins. It was rumored that they had been passed down since ancient times. Although there were struggles between them, they were actually closely related and came from the same source. At this time, the 8th furnace had gone berserk. The other 7 furnaces were also awakened. Fire spirits gathered together and roared towards the heavens. Even the fire snake that had been locked in battle with the fire crocodile just now had locked onto Eclipse Lenqing and was angrily roaring. "Junior uncle, don't be impulsive." Sueo was the first to regain his composure. Fan Zhenghai flicked his sleeves and magic power wildly surged out. All disciples immediately retreat. In the blink of an eye, the entire scene had fallen into chaos. Eclipse Lenqing narrowed his eyes. Raging anger burned within him. "Are you threatening me?" Qin Yu responded tit for tat. "I was only protecting myself." Eclipse Lenqing stepped forwards. "I am right here. If you dare to detonate the 8th furnace, you can give it a try." Bang! The boundless aura of the nascent soul realm crushed through the highest heavens. Qin Yu straightened his back. Under the protection of the 8th furnace's aura, he wasn't affected at all. The corners of his lips curled up. A sudden smile appeared, causing Eclipse Lenqing's heart to skip a beat. A foreboding feeling spread through his body. The fire crocodile released flames that suddenly rose up. It was like a rising sun had risen from the ground. An unimaginably wild strength swept through the skies. Eclipse Lenqing was enraged. He dared to blow himself up. He actually dared to blow himself up. In that moment, while he was angry, there was also a trace of regret. If he knew this would happen, he wouldn't have pushed this boy too far. But he never imagined that this boy would be so unyielding and directly destroy himself. If the 8th furnace were to self-destruct, then Immortal Eclipse Valley's 8 great furnaces would be doomed to be flawed. Moreover, besides him and a few other people here, everyone else would be buried here. The consequences of this were so painful that he didn't even dare to imagine them. Humph! With a cold cough, a figure suddenly appeared. The figure raised its hands and slammed them down. The light that erupted from the fire crocodile instantly dimmed as it was forcefully suppressed. The fire crocodile's tear-streaked face was revealed. In that moment, it suddenly regretted its actions. It was a great furnace with endless life and it had just met its true love. So how could it be so impulsive and play with that bastard Qin Yu? After its self-destruction was stopped, it felt a lingering fear. But all that was left was the joy of surviving a calamity. It quickly scattered the terrifying strength that gathered around it and hugged the person in front of it, crying its heart out. Pill Crucible's lips twitched. He kicked the fire crocodile away and swept his eyes around with dignity. He angrily shouted, "What nonsense!" With the old ancestors' anger, everyone fell silent and fell to their knees. The only ones left standing were Eclipse Lenqing and Qin Yu. Eclipse Lenqing's face flushed red. He cupped his hands together, Valley Master. Pill Crucible nodded. He took a deep breath and said, "Eclipse Lenqing, just how old are you? Why are you adding to this mess? If it weren't for me helping out in time, you should be well aware of what the consequences would have been." Eclipse Lenqing was incomparably embarrassed. It was my lack of consideration. As he spoke, he ruthlessly glared at Qin Yu. This bastard. After all, he was a nascent Soul Supreme Elder, so Pill Crucible couldn't say anything more. He turned and angrily rebuked. "Qin Yu, what are you doing? Do you think your senior apprentice brother is living too freely, so you want to set off some fireworks in my immortal Eclipse Valley?" Qin Yu had an innocent expression. "Senior apprentice brother, please calm your anger. I was impatient for a moment and nearly made a grave mistake. I ask for Senior Apprentice Brother's forgiveness. Humph. Pill Crucible coldly coughed. It looks like I really will have to discipline you on behalf of teacher. With a wave of his sleeves, he wrapped Chinyu up and then vanished from sight. The atmosphere was strange. This was the end. Speaking of which, to activate the 8th furnace and also cause it to explode, nearly causing unimaginable consequences. This was definitely a grave mistake. You didn't even denounce him. You only said that you would discipline him on behalf of teacher, and that was it? Who knew how you would discipline him? Perhaps you would just sit down and drink a cup of tea, and that would be it. The Eclipse Clan juniors hung their heads dejectedly. Anyone could see that the old ancestor truly loved and favored this junior apprentice brother of theirs. In the future, it was best to be more honest and not provoke this person. Of course, this wasn't unrelated to the terrifying strength that Chinyu had revealed just now. In particular, when he pulled the 8th furnace to explode and forcefully stopped Eclipse Lenqing. This caused countless people to feel a chill in their hearts. This sort of person had strength, methods, and was also an incomparably crazy and violent individual. It was certainly best to keep a respectful distance from him. Eclipse Lenqing's complexion was ugly, but he didn't say anything. He turned and flew away. As for Zhang Zhongxiu, at this time, no one was paying attention to him anymore. Even if they did, they pretended not to see him. The source of today's storm was him. After experiencing such a great drama and nearly taking a trip to the gates of hell, it was best to hurry up and let him go. After everyone dispersed, Fan Zhenghai sighed with emotion. We were all mistaken. Su Ao nodded. Although I don't approve of Junior Uncle's methods, I still admire him. Fan Zhenghai glanced at him. Today's matter has become so great. As the head of the 8 furnaces, you are responsible for managing the affairs of the valley, so you will inevitably be punished. Su Ao lightly said, I will go find the old ancestor and ask for forgiveness. Fan Zhenghai wanted to say something, but hesitated. Su Ao revealed a rare smile. Don't worry, I won't harbor any resentment in my heart. In the end, if it weren't for the old ancestor, how could there be you and I today? Chapter 81. Genius in a Second. Remember, love go. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. Clouds lingered in the air, as if an immortal realm was faintly discernible. Pill Crucible's expression was solemn and dignified. Today, you've stirred up too much trouble. Chinyu had a calm expression. Who told Senior Apprentice Brother to be in such a good mood and wholeheartedly watch the play? Pill Crucible frowned. What did you say? Chinyu lightly said, Senior Apprentice Brother knows. Pill Crucible was silent for a long time. Then he leaned back and curled his lips. How boring. You brat, you're too smart. Chinyu smiled, not speaking. As he thought, Pill Crucible turned into a chatterbox. Tell me, what happened? The 8th furnace is extremely proud. So how could it possibly be enchanted by a pill furnace? As he spoke, he blinked his eyes, as if saying that he understood everything and wanted to tell the truth. Chinyu nodded. It's true. Pill Crucible earnestly looked at Chinyu. Seeing that he didn't seem to be joking, his jaw dropped open. 8 great furnaces. These were the 8 great furnaces that the Eclipse clan's ancestors had spent a great deal of time and effort to obtain. They were the cornerstone treasures of immortal Eclipse Valley. Each one of them had formed their own spiritual nature and could be called a spirit treasure. Their preciousness was self-evident. But now they had been lured away by someone with a mere pill furnace. Pill Crucible's heart nearly collapsed. He clenched his teeth and ruthlessly said, Speak! Where did you get that pill furnace? If you dare to lie to me, then you're dead. Chinyu spread out his hands. I obtained it together with the jade slip. It might be something that teacher left behind. Pill Crucible let out a long breath and immediately relaxed. If it's teacher's item, then I can rest assured. Just as he was about to say something, his eyes flashed and he straightened up, putting on a dignified appearance. Qin Yu knew that someone had arrived. And indeed, old ancestor, Su Ao requests an audience. A calm voice echoed out. Pil Crucible waved his hand and the fog dispersed, revealing a path. Su Ao quickly walked in. He respectfully bowed. Greetings, old ancestor, junior uncle. Pil Crucible nodded. Su Ao, what is the matter? Su Ao cupped his hands across his chest. The old ancestor has bestowed upon me the authority to oversee the daily affairs of the valley. Recently, there have been many disturbances in the valley, and many disciples have been injured. Today, the fifth elder and junior uncle fought and nearly committed a grave mistake. Su Ao cannot escape the blame. I ask the old ancestor to punish me. Pil Crucible paused for a moment and then slowly said, I am well aware of your character, but since these things have occurred, you must give an explanation to the valley. Love, go small, say Nekka from today onwards. You will relinquish your authority to manage the valley's affairs. Zhao Xian will temporarily be in charge. Suke respectfully acknowledged. He stood up and bowed to the two again before turning around to leave. Pil Crucible sighed, a trace of guilt in his eyes. Qin Yu's thoughts stirred. Senior apprentice brother is watching a play. Could it be related to Su Ao? Pil Crucible shook his head. I knew I wouldn't be able to hide it from you. If I did this, then I would have lost all face and I would have truly let Su Ao down. But my surname is Zhao, so I can't pass down the legacy of my ancestors to an outsider. Qin Yu thought for a moment and said, Senior apprentice brother has no choice but to do this. I think Su Ao has already guessed what will happen, so he came to receive his punishment on his own initiative. Pil Crucible nodded. Su Ao is extremely intelligent. His cultivation and temperament are both excellent choices. But what a pity. Well, I don't want to mention these trivial matters again. He glanced at Qin Yu. After today's battle, you have thoroughly established your footing. From now on, there shouldn't be anyone who dares to point fingers at you. He paused for a moment and continued to say, In the future, you will be the master of the 8th furnace. I will pass down the order for you to move to the station. It will be beneficial to your cultivation. Qin Yu stood up and bowed. Thank you, senior apprentice brother. The cold sweat on his back was absorbed by his robes, and his taut heartstrings slowly dispersed. He turned and left. As he watched him leave, Pil Crucible restrained his expression. He faintly smiled. Junior apprentice brother, you should feel relieved about this arrangement. Qin Yu's footsteps were light and quick, a light smile on his lips. After Pil Crucible knew that he could control the 8th furnace to self-destruct, he still wanted him to move to the station. This sort of attitude left him feeling much more at ease. Perhaps he really was overthinking things. A moment later, Qin Yu found Qi Jiao's residence. The arrival of Immortal Eclipse Valley's junior uncle, and especially the battle at the Dawn Perch platform that had been intentionally spread out by the outsiders, caused countless eyes to reveal awe. Among them was that Wei Jing who had pestered Qin Yu to exchange for the Sky Thunder bamboo branch. This person had a dazed expression. As he looked at the distant Qin Yu, he mumbled, It's him, it's really him. Several Wei family juniors gulped, their hearts filled with joy. They looked at their great-uncle with worship in their eyes. Luckily, they had listened to their great-uncle's words and hadn't disrespected him. Otherwise, they feared they would have already been turned to slag. Sensing the juniors' gazes, Wei Jing coughed. He lightly said, The cultivation world is filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Perhaps the passers-by around you are some mysterious and unfathomable great figure. I hope that after this matter, you will all be more cautious in your actions in the future. The several juniors bowed. We will remember great-uncle's teachings. Wei Jing nodded. He held his hands behind his back, his auracom. His golden core magic power slowly revolved, slowly refining away the cold sweat that had gathered on his body. Cough, cough, the past was the past. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Fuck. Why are you still thinking about it? The more I think about it, the more afraid I am that you don't know. Stop, you bastard. I can't stop sweating. Chi Jiao and her senior apprentice sister supported a woman as they respectfully welcomed Qin Yu. The several men behind them nearly touched the ground with their heads, afraid that Qin Yu's eyes would fall on them. As for that senior apprentice brotherly who had falsely accused them, he still didn't appear. It was unknown whether he had been expelled from the sect or whether he had collapsed to the ground in fright upon hearing Qin Yu's arrival. Of course, there was no need to mention the minor details. The woman looked to be in her 40s. Her appearance was elegant and her eyes were calm. She bowed and said, "Greetings, fellow Taoist Qin Yu." Qin Yu returned the greeting. "I came here for my friend. May I ask where he is now?" Chi Jiao stood up. "Reporting to my lord, fellow Taoist Sung is recuperating in a stone house not too far away." She turned her head. The woman nodded. "Bring fellow Taoist Qin Yu there." Qin Yu cupped his hands together. "Thank you." The two left. The senior apprentice sister wanted to say something, but hesitated. The woman sighed. "Don't worry, Chi Jiao is a smart child. She will know what to do." Soon, Chi Jiao stopped in front of a stone house. "My lord, it's here." Qin Yu pushed open the door and entered. Zhang Zhongxiu was lying on a bed. Because his body was weak, he was in a deep sleep. After inspecting his injuries and finding that they had stabilized, he relaxed a little. "I'll have to trouble Miss Qi with this matter." Chi Jiao shook her head. "My lord has helped me a great deal before. A trivial matter like this isn't anything at all." She bit her lips. "If there isn't anything else, then I will bid my farewells first." Qin Yu said, "All right." He watched her leave, feeling a faint sense of alienation. Qin Yu's thoughts raced, and he rubbed his nose. In truth, this was also quite good. After sleeping for a day and night, Zhang Zhongxiu opened his eyes. There was a brief daze in them before he regained some focus. "You're awake?" Qin Yu stood up and walked over. "How do you feel?" Zhang Zhongxiu was startled. "My lord, why are you here?" Qin Yu shook his head. "I already said that there are only friends and no lords. If you continue to be like this, I really will have to leave." Zhang Zhongxiu was moved. His lips moved, but for a time he didn't know what to say. Qin Yu took out a healing pill. "I refined this myself. Eat it, it will be good for your injuries." Zhang Zhongxiu swallowed the pill. The medicinal efficacy rapidly took effect, and a bit more color returned to his pale face. "Tell me, just who did you offend?" Qin Yu sat down. Zhang Zhongxiu smiled. "My lord, you've already helped me take revenge." "That eclipse Shouqing?" Zhang Zhongxiu briefly explained their grudge. Qin Yu was left speechless. There was no one else who could be so narrow-minded. Perhaps this was a hereditary trait. He had also heard of Eclipse Yan's death from rage. He shook his head and said, "It's fine. Since it's like this, I won't help you seek justice. It's best if I keep a low profile during this period of time." Zhang Zhongxiu felt guilty. "It's all because of me." Qin Yu waved his hand. "The problems between me and the Eclipse Clan Juniors have been irreconcilable ever since the 8th Furnace recognized me as its master. Even if you weren't involved, it would have erupted sooner or later. After this matter, I can be considered to have cleared my name. In the future, there shouldn't be anyone randomly looking for trouble with me." He smiled. "So, don't think too much about it." Zhang Zhongxiu nodded, a look of hesitation on his face. Qin Yu thought for a moment. "Brother Zhang, our friendship is shallow, but fate runs deep. I regard you as a friend. If there is anything you need help with, feel free to tell me. As long as it is within my capabilities, I won't decline." Zhang Zhongxiu was excited. "Brother Qin just saved my life, so I shouldn't say anything more. But this matter involves the life of my niece, so I can only be bold and shameless. After East Streamtown was ravaged by the demonic path, the Zhang family moved to Yangpeak City, not too far away from Immortal Eclipse Valley. They thought that they could rest and recover, but they never imagined that Zhang Qingming would become enemies with someone and his injuries had worsened. Afterwards, he was bedridden, and the Zhang family was in a difficult situation. In order to maintain the Zhang family, they had no choice but to marry an old friend of Yangpeak City in exchange for their protection. Qin Yu frowned. Are you speaking of Zhang Mo? Zhang Zhongxiu nodded. Mo. After learning of this matter, that girl washed her face with tears every night, but she didn't reveal it in front of others. I felt very uncomfortable seeing this. Brother Qin, you have an exalted status right now. If I could trouble you to say a few words, perhaps you could change Mo's fate. Qin Yu fell silent. Zhang Zhongxiu anxiously said, Brother Qin, I beg you to help me. Qin Yu shook his head. Don't worry. I am old friends with the Zhang family, so I won't stand idly by. Your injuries aren't light right now, so it's not good for you to move around. Once your condition stabilizes a bit, I will go with you. Zhang Zhongxiu happily said, My injuries are fine. Brother Qin, let's set off tomorrow. Qin Yu thought for a moment. All right. The next day, Zhang Zhongxiu was in so much pain that he was dripping with sweat. He forced himself off the bed. Qin Yu flicked his sleeves and gently lifted him up with magic power. It's fine as long as you point the way. Yangpeak City wasn't too far away. It was a city attached to Immortal Eclipse Valley. There were originally two great cultivation families in the city, the Lu family and the Yun family. When the Zhang family moved here, they were the third family. Of course, this was only on the surface. Who didn't know that the Zhang family's old ancestor was seriously injured? For hours later, a beam of light flew into Yangpeak City. Zhang Zhongxiu gratefully said, Brother Qin, it's here. Qin Yu looked around. Although he hadn't visited the Zhang family in East Streamtown, he had seen from afar that extraordinary mansion with its deep background. As he looked at the courtyard in front of him, although it could still be considered a noble family, it was still 10 times worse than before. From this, it could be seen that the Zhang family's days weren't good. The gatekeeper isn't here. Zhang Zhongxiu frowned. Zhang Qingming's family was extremely strict, and his servants followed the rules. It was rare for them to be negligent like this. Qin, you faintly heard some sounds coming from the courtyard. He frowned and said, Let's go in. With a flick of his sleeves, the two of them flew into the courtyard.